Welcome to the All in the Water podcast. I'm Jimmy Fee. I've got Anthony DeCicci here, and this week's guest is Captain Joe Diorio. And Joe, my introduction to you, a lot of people know you as a big striped bass guy. But before I knew you as a big striped bass guy, I knew you as a steelhead guy.
Yep.
And the way I knew that was through the message board Salmon Crazy. Do you remember Salmon Crazy?
I remember Salmon Crazy.
So Salmon Crazy was one of those fishing forums like Stripers Online or Striped Dash Bass, but it was all basically the Salmon River. And I remember I would go there for my reports back when I was really getting into the salmon fishing, or the steelhead fishing, first getting into it. So 2009, 2010. I would go there, look for the reports, decide if I was going to make the run that weekend. And I saw one report where the guy was complaining. He goes, I was in the fly zone. There was another guy there, and he hooked up constantly. And every time he hooked up, he would say, ba-boom. And I remember thinking, what an hole.
Yep.
But then you read more, and that guy was getting horribly outfished. And then I came to know you, like, through that, and I was like, that's not so bad. I'd be mad, too, if I was getting that badly outfished. So, dude, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into fishing, steelhead fishing, striper fishing? What's
Man, first and foremost, Salmon Crazy, that's a blast from the past, man. I haven't heard that in like 6 or 7 years, so that's pretty cool. But as far as getting into fishing, I mean, didn't start getting into fishing until I was like 3 or 4 years old. My dad would take me out bluegill fishing, and it slowly got into saltwater as we got like 7 or 8, and then been fishing then, strictly saltwater, pretty much all the way through. And then once I got into college, I remember going on ctfisherman.com. It was an old school website, and there was a couple guys on there that would go upstate New York and do some steelhead fishing. And there was this one guy, Jay Hova, I'll never forget. He literally posted these bright dime silver steelhead, and they were absolutely gorgeous, 15, 16 pounds, beautiful. And I go, and it was December, January, and I'm like, where are these guys catching these fish? Send him a message, Salmon River. I go, I got to go. So I remember going up the following year for salmon. That was the first time I ever went. Me and my buddies absolutely hammered them.
First time, just crushed them?
Just hammered them.
Like, what did you go there with? Like, what kind of gear did you have?
I went there with spinning gear that was like 7.5 foot rods with like 4,000 reels and braid. And we just went up there with, I saw some like flesh flies at like Cabela's, and I found these other like woolly buggers and then tube flies and all these different types of flies. And I was like, I figured it was just like streamer fishing back home. No, it's completely different. It's combat fishing. You cast at 2 and lift at 10. And when I go to the first hole that we went to, it was Trestle Pool, and I'll never forget, we were going down the road, and I go, oh, there's a fishing spot right there. And it was like a 1/4 mile walk into that one spot. It wasn't on the side where you can drive in. It was the spot that you walk in on. We walked down, and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning. And it looked like walking into a video game. It was like 50 guys on each side of the river. Everyone's got fish on, coming up, fish on, coming up. You hear coming down and whoopsh, and the lines snapping, rods are snapping. I was like,
what?
This is crazy. There's fish jumping out of the water. So I was hooked right away. So I sat back. It was me and 4 of my buddies. We had no clue what we were doing. And the 3 other guys that I brought were like, 3 or 4 of the guys that I brought, they had no clue how to fish.
Yeah.
Like zero. So I sat back, watched what these guys were doing. I said, okay, we need big sinkers and we need little, like, tiny flies.
It is not a delicate fishery.
No. So finesse. I'm casting out. And I'm like trying to do my, haul cast. And I'm like, okay. Oh, I got one. First one was right in the butt. Right in the butt. See you later. Goes upstream. Whoosh. I remember tangling up with the guy next to me. He's pissed. He's not happy. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. This is my first time. But it was.
That's
awesome. I was hooked immediately. I remember we slept at Deer Creek Motel. But it wasn't in the motel. It was in the RVs that we paid $8 per person to stay in a night. And there were like bugs everywhere, all dead bugs in the windowsill.
Oh my God,
the only thing that was clean were the sheets. They literally put them on when we were there. So it was gross. I stayed there for 3 weekends in a row. I went back the next 3 weekends. And then that following year, I started steelhead fishing.
Yeah, I mean, it's right on brand for a couple college kids going to the river.
Yeah.
But how wild is that? Like when you just kind of stumble across them, and steelhead do have that pull. Like a picture of a nice steelhead has that, like, wait, that stuff's within reach here?
It's like it's within road trip distance.
Yeah.
And so what year was that you were first getting into the salmon river fishing?
It had to be like 2007, 2008.
So my first trip was 2009. And you did a story for us a couple years ago about those, like, how you got into it.
Yeah.
And how, man, you loved it so much. You were like, every free weekend you were going up there.
Yeah.
And when I first, it was the same thing, man. Like those first couple winters I discovered, I was there every chance I had. And my first steelhead was also a guy who you knew was Frenchie.
Yes.
My first trip up there did not go nearly as well as yours sounds like it went. I borrowed a rod from Andy Nebreski here, broke it immediately on like a snag, not even on a fish. So I go back to Fat Nancy's, like, buy all the gear, rent a rod, go back again, lose all the split shots and hooks. Like, it's an unforgiving river if you're just getting the feel
you
for it.
You got to know how to tie. It's quick.
That's what blows my mind about a bunch of college kids, half of which don't know how to fish, going up there and crushing.
My buddies didn't crush.
Okay.
They literally were having salmon running into them, and they weren't catching anything. My buddy Pete got knocked over by a school of salmon that were like coming up the river, and I was like, "Well, get out of the water, dude." He's like, "Oh," I'm like, "You're gonna get hooked with a hook," you know. So
that's awesome.
It was great.
You put a good trip together your first time.
Yes,
that is.
But it was
wild.
salmon fishing. So my first time steelhead fishing was completely different. It was end of February. It was actually probably right around now. And I went into muskrat hole. And I never forget, first cast with this like silly fly that should never catch anything. Cast out, right in the mouth. I must have flossed him perfectly because it was perfect. And I go, "Oh, this is so easy. Everyone's telling me how hard it is." I went 4 days in a row without a hit after that. And so I went back up the next week. I didn't catch a fish my first day. That night, I'm sitting on a porch of Fish On Motel, and I'm getting absolutely hammered. I mean, I had a 30 rack for myself, and I'm just going to town, and all of a sudden, this drunk guy comes walking by me, and he's like, "Hey, you up here fishing?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You catch anything?" I go, "No, not at all." And he's like, "I'm a guide on the river," and like, I'm like, "Oh, teach me how to fish. Teach me how to fish up here." So he comes over and he's like telling me about these center pins. And I'm like, I saw a guy earlier that day fishing trestle pool, and he had 6 casts in a row on a 10 mil bead back in the day. And this is a long time ago. Not many guys center pin fish back then. It was very, very exclusive. A lot of guys were either float fishing with spinning reels or they're swooping with fly rods. That's really it. I saw my first center pinner that day. I go, "Oh, I saw that guy." I asked him what he was doing. He told me what he was using. I went to Fat Nancy's. I got the same thing. Did the same thing with my spinning gear. Didn't work. Mm-hmm. And he was like, "You probably were doing it wrong or had something wrong." So we got hammered. And at the end of the night, we were both so drunk. I looked at him, and his name was Rob Clark, Frenchie. And I go, "As long as you promise not to rape me in the middle of the night, you can stay. I have 7 other beds. Please, don't just be nice." And we went to bed. Next thing you know, we both woke up at 10 o'clock in the morning. We went down to town pool. My second cast, I caught one on one of his beads. Third cast, caught another one. Fourth cast, caught another one. I ended up catching 7 or 8 fish that morning.
This episode of the On the Water podcast is sponsored by our friends at Old Town Canoe and Kayak. I love kayak fishing, and to be honest, there's no place in the world that I would rather be than fishing on my Old Town Big Water pedal kayak. I do all kinds of fishing on my Old Town. In early spring, I'm out on the small ponds fishing for largemouth bass and pickerel. By May, I'm out every morning at first light, gliding along in the harbors and salt ponds, throwing topwater lures at freshly arrived stripers. And then one thing I can't wait for is when the bluefish show up in spring on the sand flats here on Cape Cod. These fish tend to be pretty good sized, 8 to 10 pounders, and they come into just 3 to 4 feet of water, swimming right below the surface. In the Old Town Big Water, it's stable enough that I can stand up and spot them, and then I sight cast to them. I throw flies to them. The blues can be incredibly spooky, and I don't even know if there's another way that you could get so close to them and do that kind of fishing without being in a kayak. The Old Town Sportsman lineup includes paddle, pedal, and power-driven kayaks in a range of sizes and setups, including Old Town's newest kayak, the ePDL Plus. Whether you're new to kayak fishing and on your way to becoming completely addicted like I am, or you're already in love with kayak fishing and just looking for your next vessel, Old Town has a kayak that will fit your fishing.
All right, Joe, so you kind of fell in love with the center pin fishing up on the Salmon River, but how far is that for you?
About 4 hours and 15, 4 hours, 20 minutes.
So, I mean, that's about 5.5, 6 for me here. So you can't do it as much as you'd want to, but you kind of took it back to some of your home waters, which is the Farmington River, which is Farmington's a tremendous trout fishery, big wild brown trout, beautiful rainbow trout. Plus, it's pretty heavily stocked. So, what's different about center pinning there versus the Salmon River? Like, how did you switch the technique over?
It's just a smaller river. I mean, using a little bit less shot. But the Salmon River and the Farmington River are very, very close to how they set up in pools. Like, there's some very, very deep runs. There's some shallow, riffly runs. It's very, very similar. So it wasn't much of a, challenge to get adjusted to the river. And actually, we were fishing with... when I was a kid, we were fishing with corn, marshmallows, worms, power bait, and then rooster tails and stuff like that. And that was so much fun with rooster tails. I still enjoy doing that and gulp. But
I don't want to go too far down this road, but I feel like there were very strict divisions. And I'm ripping off Joe Cermelli because he talks about this all the time on his stuff too. But you're either like a Panther Martin guy or a rooster tail guy. And in southeastern Pennsylvania, we were all rooster tail people. But up here, they're like Thomas and
Thomas or whatever it is.
Yeah, like Thomas Boyan and stuff like that. Well, those are spoons. But so that's it. Connecticut, we're rooster tail people.
Rooster
I didn't know that.
100%
I was a
roosters.
rooster tail kid.
Yeah.
All right.
All rooster tails.
So where are the Panther Martin people? Where's
Long
that?
Island?
Maybe Jersey.
Salmon,
Long
Naugatuck
Island.
River, because
Okay.
they had the single hook on there.
But anyhow, sorry.
But anyways, so, I was, and then, I eventually started doing some fly fishing, and then I went upstate New York, learned how to center pin. And once I started center pinning, I was like, I got to do this everywhere. So I went to the Farmington. I had a bunch of old egg sacks, like they were old, stinky Whitaker egg sacks. I probably had like 20 or 30 in there, and I think I made like 10 drifts without catching a fish before they were all gone by the end of the day. So
it wasn't just like doing it for you weren't just doing it because wouldn't it be neat to catch a center pin? You actually found it was more effective than the other techniques.
Oh, God. Oh, gosh. So I found throughout the years, center pinning and using eggs and jigs is really good from November, or I should say October through maybe April, May. Once it hits May, the hatches really start to come and the fish just take over on the flies. So that time is a great time to start Euro nymphing and time to start doing dry fly fishing, any type of nymphing with actual fly fishing. The other way you could do it with the center pin is instead of using an egg sack, you just put 3 or 4 flies, string them down the line, and it works just as well. That took many years to figure out, okay, these fish aren't eating eggs, time to go back and do what I was doing when I was, nymphing. But yeah, the center pinning on that river is just exploded. There's a lot of people doing it now. Every time I go down there, you see at least 1 or 2 people. I love it. It's a great place. And nothing better.
I mean, it's part of your guide service. You do.
Yes.
You take people out there. You've taken me and Chris once.
Yep.
I know you took Chris another time too. But that was really cool because I'd only ever done it up on the Salmon River there, so I wasn't sure how it would apply. But it's like you said, it's just a smaller scale. You're looking for the seams, it's all the same, lighter rod, and if you want to get good at it and dialed in, but you can't just drive driving 6 hours every weekend just isn't in the cards for me anymore.
Yeah.
But
it's a great place to learn how to center pin. It's a great place to learn how to fly fish or something like those places. The Farmington is a little, you don't have to worry about in most spots walking through the water and getting toppled downstream, like Salmon River or some of these other places up in upstate New York. It's really easy wading. But, the center pinning there, you're fighting fish that are anywhere from 12 inches to 24, maybe. I mean, there's one that was caught 29, 30 inches a couple years ago. And there are some really, really big, there's some 2-footers in there. There's no doubt about that. We caught one the other day that was 22 and a half inches. So there's some really big fish, but you get to learn how to fight the fish. You get, with the center pin, there's no drag, you know, like you were talking about earlier with the steelhead. You get to feel the fish, how he's fighting before you actually go somewhere else. It's a great little place to you know.
Center pin fishing, I think, was the first type of fishing that felt like it wasn't even fishing. It's all new. Like, I don't know, you pick up little techniques and tactics and there's different styles across all types of fishing, but center pin was like learning a new sport almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had to retrain. Like, you don't cast the same way. There's so many different, you know, things in play. Like your fingers are the drag. It's not natural casting motion.
Fly fishing and spin fishing are closer together in their similarity than center pin fishing is to either one of them.
The only thing that center pin fishing is really, really closely related to is nymphing, indicator nymphing. I mean, I tell everybody all the time, it's center pinning is long distance nymphing. Right? Instead of you only being able to work a 50-foot area with your casts, now I'm able to cast until our
hero drift.
Yeah. As long as there's no one behind me, I'm floating it till I can't see it anymore. You know what I mean? So
you jumped right from kind of the like the chuck and duck fly fishing into center. How long did that take? Like from your first steelhead trip to when you became kind of a full-fledged center pin guy? How many how many years?
Well, it was. So I went salmon fishing in October that year, and in February I did my first steelhead trip with the fly, and by March I got my first center pin.
So that was quick.
Yeah. Well, I saw this guy hooks 6 in a row, 5 or 6 in a row on the center pin. And then I met Frenchie and he showed me the whole entire deal, how to fish up there. And I just realized, okay, this is nymphing. I'm really good at nymphing back home. I can catch a lot of trout doing that. But up here, it's completely different. But with the center pin, it's long distance nymphing. I can drift a mile of these runs and hit the perfect spot every single time. And like, as you know, and with trout, they sit in certain little holes. Something may look perfect on the other side of the river. You have this big deep hole and there might just be slate there. Instead of 3 feet in, it's all gravel and they want to sit in that area. So you're able to really, really pinpoint the areas that you want to fish because you have that indicator. You can see where you exactly are.
And then you can repeat it. Pretty easily once you get it figured out.
Yeah, it's a deadly combination. It's a lot of fun. You're the drag. You're the one fighting the reel, fighting the fish. You know, hand-to-hand combat, 1-to-1 ratio. You know, it's awesome. It's adrenaline. It gets the adrenaline pumping. There's not many things these days that get the adrenaline pumping more than steelhead and obviously bluefin and big stripers.
Yes. The steelhead are really special fish. Like the first time you see a picture of like a big, beautiful steelhead, it's like, wait, that's just, you know, a 6 or an 8 hour drive. Like, I need to do that.
It's a lot of fun.
It doesn't usually go as well as your first dive into it when I've had some miserable learning experiences. I've still only been...
You've been
3 times.
3 times. You've had 2 bad trips.
Yeah.
But you jumped right... You're only... pretty much steelhead experiences with the center pin. It took longer for me. Like my first steelhead trip was 2009. I first center pin fished in 2014. And there was a lot of intimidation for me. Like I saw these guys doing it, but I knew very little about it. Didn't know anybody up there. So I always did like these solo runs up there. And I would stay with the people I knew up there didn't do it. Or
the people that live there don't fish. Let's be honest.
Almost snooty about it. Not snooty, but they're like, oh, like that's the newfangled thing. And like, I know what works. I've been doing this for 20 years. I used to stay with a guide and his cabin. If there's one thing you can say about Pulaski, there's nice cheap lodging up there. Like you can go and say there's Tailwaters Lodge, which is really nice. You're going to pay for it. But if you don't mind like roughing it a little bit, you can get a bed for, I think you said $8. You get it for $25 now.
Yeah. I spend $30 at the absolute most.
Dude, I used to pay like $20 a night. But the catch was the owner of the cabin would bring over like a 30-pack of Coors Light, and you were finishing that before. Yeah, dude, but I want to be up at 4 a.m. to hold my spot on the river. Like, I can't just saunter down at 10 a.m. like Joe Diorio and catch a bunch of fish wherever I end up. I have to be in the spot. So he'd like come over, and he wasn't leaving until that sometimes it'd be a 30-pack. I'm like, all right, here we go. It's going to be a foggy 3 a.m. wake up.
That's awesome.
But that was, just constantly going. Then once I got the center pin thing dialed in, I did it for a couple years on Salmon River, and now like I go further west. And I know you still pay homage to the Salmon River. You go there every year.
I go to the Salmon. I try to go at least once or twice a year. I mean, I love the place. I mean, there, the Farmington, but like same with you. I started going out west, maybe like out west by Buffalo, Niagara.
I love that place.
Some of the Erie tribs. They're easier. I'm not going to lie. They're a lot easier. You go to the Salmon River, you get humbled. You could be the best fisherman in the world, but if you don't hit them on the right day, the fishing could be unbelievable the day before, and you hit them on that wrong day, you ain't going to catch shit.
It was our first trip up there.
Those fish on the Salmon River see so many hooks. And like, you were scaling down your leader. I don't scale down my leader on the Niagara River. I go up. I'm like, oh, I just broke off a fish. Why not try 12? Meanwhile, Salmon River, it's like
15-pound test.
Should I go to 3? Yeah, exactly.
15-pound test. You just start cranking them in backwards.
But those fish are tough. It's a great river to learn on. But it got too hard for me. I'm like, yes. I wanted a little easier because time got squeezed for me, like it does. You have kids, your family grow. So you're like, I need to make sure every trip
counts.
Yeah. It's a little bit extra. Yes. So I don't mind driving 3 extra hours, 2.5 extra hours to the Niagara River because I think I've got a better shot at catching fish. I become fat and lazy on the Salmon River. I think if I went there, man, I haven't been there 2 or 3 years. I need to get back. But I think if I went there now, I'd probably blank and just end up like...
You got to go April and May. April and May are the Mother's Day is like one of the best days to go
That's late, man.
Mother's Day, I missed Mother's Day for like 7 or 8 years in a row because, sorry, Mom, I love you. You're the greatest. My grandmother too. They'd be like, what are you doing? Can I please go steelhead fishing on the Salmon River? And they'd be like, again? This is Mother's Day. I go, I'll get you flowers when I get back. But like, no, drop back season's a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, the past like 10 years, like you said, time is crunched. I don't get to go up there as much as I used to. Before, I was living up there. I had basically my whole room at the Steelhead Lodge.
The only thing holding me back was gas money back then. It was like, oh man, am I really going to go and burn like 3 tanks of gas to 4 tanks of gas to get up there and back? But
I was doing life insurance at that point. I'd be like, all right, I sold the policy. I got $500. This is going to last me at least a month of going upstate New York. So, but like going out west, it's a lot different, a lot more expensive to go out there, drive out there. Not only that, the rooms aren't very cheap. The rooms are $80, $90, so
it's the Niagara Falls effect.
Yeah,
you know.
But
that place is awesome.
It's beautiful. It's a great fishery. It's a lot easier. The fish aren't as picky, and there's some really good.
I mean, even I was able to seal the deal on the Mighty Niagara. The odds were stacked against us. We show up. And I was with Jim for my first trip up there. Chocolate milk.
I want to talk about this trip more extensively. But first, you mentioned the word dropbacks, and you mentioned kind of the steelhead season. But just to talk about how that progresses, it's almost the mirror image of the striper season, where as the stripers are leaving the northeast New England and heading south in October, that's when the steelhead are leaving Lake Ontario and heading into the tributaries there. And some of them will go in and eat and leave. Some of them will stay there the entire winter. And steelhead are spring spawners. So some of them will just hunker down, wait in the river until spring spawn, and then drop back to the lake. And that's why they're nicknamed dropbacks. And they aren't the beautiful steelhead you see in the pictures where they're dime bright. They look
most of the time, though.
Look like they've been to hell and back because they're very skinny. They've dropped their eggs. They beat each other up spawning, but they're hungry.
And they jump and they fight, and they're a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and
they're great fish.
I mean, you can go up there. I remember me and Garrett Brancy, the guy, he is the head river walker or head guy at the DSR now. We did probably like 60 or 70 steelhead in a half of a day, and we were catching them on Swedish fish, Twizzlers. Jesus. I took out the quick stick, the quickie.
Yeah.
I threw it out, and I'm just reeling it back in. Caught like 3 or 4 doing that.
Dude, my best trip was a drop back trip.
Yeah,
but I've hit it wrong, dude. I've hit it.
Oh, yeah.
Where
you know what? You might. I remember you, Chris, went up and you fished the DSR.
That was the time I hit it really wrong. No, I only hit it a little wrong once, and then Chris and I went. I was like, Chris, it's a lock. We go up there in late April. We can't miss.
Yeah, but you guys fished the DSR. All the fish were upriver. And I was like, what are you guys doing fishing the DSR? They're not going to be there for another 2-3 weeks.
I called you on the way home, and you're like, my buddies, their arms are tired, and they never want to catch another steelhead again. And they were like 2 miles upriver, you guys. And I was just like, all right, don't ever tell Chris that.
But that's how that place is that time of the year. Crazy. If you hit, you could, like I said, you can go on Mother's Day and it could be 60, 70, 80 fish from me. And then if you go upriver or you're too far downriver, you can't get nothing. So that's the one thing about those fish. It does take them a little while to get up the river and continue moving forward.
All right. Can we do a drop back trip this year? Can we? Cheech needs all the help
I would love to. I'm going to Florida for 2 weeks, and I'm going to Puerto Rico as well.
So we'll be 2 miles. We'll be 2 miles off the fish.
Right. You know, just make sure you have cell service. All right.
I'm happy to tell you where the guys to go, but definitely, I mean,
I need a banger steelhead trip. It has been like all famine and no feasting. Plenty of feasting, but that's with the buffalo wings.
This is the insult to injury for Cheech's last trip. We went to Niagara. It was April Fool's Day. We did 4 days up there.
Fools
like 4
abound.
days, you have a chance for conditions to change. If it starts shitty, it's going to improve and be good by the end. Like 4 days feels like enough for things to shift.
Yeah.
The problem was things were shifting in a downward direction from the moment we got there. And we get there, and I caught one pretty much right away.
I was so pumped. I'm like,
it's going to happen, dude.
Like, so get my first steelhead.
He's center pin fishing with my rig, which is too light for the salmon
Day
river.
3
but
of
okay.
ever steelhead fishing. I blanked 2 days on
Salmon River.
on the Salmon River, which was terrible and frozen.
It was tough, and the water was getting dirtier, and it just wasn't happening. Like I felt like we were overfish. That you could see them rolling, and then finally he gets one late in the day. I think I got a second one that day.
That wasn't our first day.
That was our first day.
Was
you
it?
Caught one. Yep. Yeah. It was a long day.
That was like the 48-hour day of fishing. Somehow.
The difference between an April trip and a November trip is the days are so short. November and December, you're like, man, a full day. You're like, oh, I need more time. And then April, you're like, oh my god, like I can't feel like I can't leave the river, but there's still 3 hours.
He had stuck 2 fish, and now I'm starting to get like kind of sour and like why do I suck at this? What am I doing wrong? And I'm starting to get really focused, and then I just lost all hope because we were literally fishing in chocolate milk, and he was doing everything right, and he had only hooked 2, and I'm doing the right thing like 10% of the time because I'm just learning. I'm literally standing on a point of a rock singing, you know, I effing suck at steelhead fishing, like mocking myself, right? And as I break into like the third line of that song, my float drops down, and I go, float down, and I set the hook expecting it to, you know, pop out of the rock because I had something janky. I felt the head shakes, and I'm like, and I got a steelhead. But the one thing about learning center pin fishing, it is so much of like retraining your muscle memory to do what you need to do to be able to just cast far enough with accuracy, right? And then get the line up and work it. That like you put all of your focus into that. But what the hell do you do when you hook a fish? He looks at me and he goes, fight it. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And it was awesome though.
So a lot of guys, when you're taught to fight fish, you keep the rod up high, right? Worst thing you could do river fishing.
I was just standing like a statue like this.
Right to the ground. You could put the rod in the water, and what that does, and I do the same thing with striper fishing.
The angle.
Same thing with striper fishing. With striper fishing, especially with docks, you get that fish, you stick them, you put the rod up top. All of a sudden, that fish is coming out of the water, and the whole face is like this. If you drop that rod in the water, it keeps his head down, and he's able to use the mass of the water to slow it down. Same thing with river fishing. You have all this water flushing over the top of the fish. If you go up on a rod, it's going to be like this. And now you have more pressure going side to side. If you keep his head low, he's able to move upriver. And Frenchie taught me that. And I've been able to translate it to the striper fish, and it's been great. I will never forget the first time I went up with Jimmy to the Niagara. He actually...
Was it his first trip up there?
I don't know if that was your first trip.
No. It was my third. Like I'd had one decent trip. one not so decent trip. I mean, it was my third or fourth, but
Yeah,
I
that
had a
was
couple
our
of decent
first
trips.
one.
Yeah, the first time we were up there.
We were up there together, and Jimmy hooks up this steelhead, and he's had like 10 on, and we both had a bunch on.
Yeah.
We didn't land any of them in that one spot.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Screw this, I'm landing it." And he's fighting this thing, and it's just going. It was a big one.
Yeah.
It's taken off, and the river, the Niagara River, it moves as fast, if not faster than the canal at some points.
Yeah. Oh,
a lot faster. And then it slows down. And then it's faster. And it slows. And this thing was just going.
He broke out into the main current.
Yes, right out there. And I go, "Jimmy, just break him off." And he goes, "No, I'm following this thing." And here he goes down the river, down. He gets him back up. And this fish is in Canada. It's in Canada. Like, no joke.
Literally.
And then all
Being
of a
charged
sudden,
roaming charges,
all of
didn't-
a sudden, I don't know if you lost all your line or if you broke at the backing part.
I broke at the backing knot.
He was at his backing, loses everything. The worst thing about it was,
This is the worst outcome.
So we parked in this one lot way downriver, and the only way to get to where we were is you either have to walk all the way around Art Park, or you have to go up and then back down to the bottom, and then go back up. Jimmy didn't have another rod or reel or nothing like that.
I bolted, man, because the fishing was so
It was
good.
so
man.
good. We were doing like.
Dude, that was the only
love
steelhead
that
I've ever
place.
seen at night was your steelhead
Yes.
that trip.
Yes.
And I think I hooked one because I heard one jump out. We did good night fishing that trip.
Yes.
And that's one thing. A lot of the
We were
tributaries.
catching more fish at night than during the day. Remember,
Dude,
we
the
were
browns?
like, and there was nobody else out. We were like, "We got this whole place to ourselves. This is amazing."
That's a thing? Why? You can fish
you can
at
fish
night?
at night on the Niagara. You can fish anytime there. That's a beautiful thing about it.
know that?
So like we were sleeping like 2 hours a day,
Dude, and
then
that was the trip we went to the buffet with Gal.
yes, oh, man.
Dude, God rest his soul. Gal
Yes.
passed away a couple years ago, but he was like so not. He was like, "You know what? I'll be your tour guide." We're like,
Yes.
okay. And he's like, we went to a buffet, and I remember him knocking stuff off my plate and being like, "Nope, that doesn't cost him anything. You get that." I'm like, I don't want that. I want the.
That doesn't taste
I
very
want
good.
the rolls. You know.
We were
That's
so
funny.
tired. We were so tired from fishing. We were supposed to do walleye that night, and we were like, "No, we ain't going walleye." We ain't going
I want to
walleye
catch a
fishing.
walleye just to check that box.
But remember that he came the next morning
I
and
do.
he's like has like Tim Hortons and
Yes.
breakfast sandwiches, and we're like, dude, like that.
He was the man.
I just met him. He was so
Yes,
nice.
He
Dude.
was such a nice guy.
We need to make a trip. I need to get a graduate lesson in centerpin fishing.
Dude, you, start with the Farmington. Like
Yeah.
that is you get
Come
the
up
feel
to the
for
Farmington, get a feel for the fish, learn how to really cast. I mean, the fishing's so easy on the Farmington. We were actually, me and Chris were going down to the hole, not the day that we were together, but the next time I took him, I go, "Hey, Chris, the fishing's been really good in this spot. We're gonna catch a fish while you're taking a photo." You know, Chris kind of likes to hold the fish out for a little while, take his nice photos. I do too. Everyone does, but it's got to be perfect. So he's sitting there. He's got the rod, the center pin rod over his head. He's taking his picture, and he goes, lets the fish go. And I'm telling him he's going to hook up with a fish while he's doing this, guaranteed, while we're walking into the place. Sure enough, he takes, and this is like the second or third fish, he takes the rod off his head, gets tight. Ooh, fish on, fish on. While
funny.
that's how good the Farmington fishing is. I mean, I was there last week. I did at least 35 to 40 fish.
Oh, man.
And it was so funny. This fly guy, poor guy, he came up to me. He goes, "Any luck?" And I go, "Yep." And he goes, "How many?" I go, 28, 30? And he goes, "You're full of shit." And I go, and as soon as he said I was full of shit, the bobber went down, set the hook. It was like a 19-incher.
that guy's on the Farmington Crazy forum now, being like, "You won't believe this asshole who I ran into."
Yelling boom at me.
I go, "Hey, you want to learn how to center pin?" I go, "Put the fly rod away during the wintertime, bring it up back out in May." Because like you have to be really, really good to catch fish on the fly during the wintertime. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It is very, very tough. I got a lot of respect for those guys that do it because it's a challenging way to fish for them. If you want to catch, center pin.
But the thing about the Farmington is that it's going to reward good fishing. You can go to the Salmon River, do
Yes.
everything right, be on fish, drifting right, your shot patterns perfect, and they still won't bite. But you go somewhere like that, and the fish are, I've heard people, like, when they talk about permit versus bonefish, like, it's an honest fish. It rewards a good, honest effort. Whereas on the Salmon River, they can be so tough. If you hit that wrong stretch, like you did.
The bad thing about it is when you go to the Salmon River and you know you're doing everything right and you're still not catching, it's like, what the heck? But when you go to the Oak or when you go to Niagara or Burt, you're going to be rewarded for what you did at the other place.
But you can also be like, now I know it's not me. That was always my issue on the Salmon River. I'm like, my float's at the wrong depth. My shot pattern's wrong. I'm still like that, where I don't know. That's the part.
It's just like any style of fishing. You go striper fishing, you go tuna fishing. How do I do this? What am I doing right? Am I in the right area? I mean, I remember the first time I was going on tuna fishing, I was like, I have no clue what I'm doing. Am I supposed to be targeting these things in the middle or on the bottom or on top? I mean, there's a whale over there. It's middle of the daytime, 2 o'clock. I don't see any fish jumping, but I'm going to throw a popper. See what happens. Nothing worked.
Yeah.
Nothing worked. And then all of a sudden, boom. One day we were jigging and next thing we were catching fish.
The people at Z-Man Fishing have been dedicated to ignoring the book on traditional lure making, instead setting out to create truly category-defining lures, soft baits, and jig systems that simply catch fish. At Z-Man, authentic innovation remains a badge of honor, recognized and admired by countless fans worldwide. I'm one of those fans. I've fished countless Z-Man products in both fresh and salt, from their chatterbaits to their soft plastics made from a material they call Elastec. Some of the most naturally acting, durable soft baits I've ever fished. I've caught PBs on their smallest baits, like on a massive brown trout, choked a micro finesse TRD while targeting smallies, to hooking giant tarpon and redfish on their diesel minnows, which are also phenomenal striper baits. The best part is, when bluefish show up, they'll hold up to them too. Give them a look at zmanfishing.com or ask for them at your local shop.
I didn't want to jump to the tuna stuff yet, but no. I mean, like, I want to get there, but I want to talk about what I would guess is striper's still your true love, or they're still your...
Yeah. I mean, I love stripers. They're always going to be my number one, but tuna have definitely taken over a good majority of my life, and like the season, it definitely is. And I was told when I was a young kid, if you don't want to like hate stripers, don't tuna fish. And it's honestly the truth, because it took away, I mean, I revamped my business a little bit because of it, starting to tuna fish. But I love stripers. They're my main part of my business.
So what does your striper fishing history look like? When we first started talking, your big thing was like going out to Block Island, catching giant bass on eels. But before that, like where'd you start with striper fishing?
So my parents bought a place in Old Lyme, Connecticut. And right as soon as we bought the place, my dad bought a 20-foot Mako. And he was like, we had a 16-foot bass tracker. We were fishing out of that like for the first like 6-8 months, the first year. We were catching blackfish, we're catching schoolies, scup, porgies and stuff like that. Nothing too crazy unless we ran into a blitz. And then once my dad bought the Mako, then we started getting a little bit more serious. We started catching more stripers, started fishing at night for them. We started fishing on our buddies' boats, fluke fishing. So that's really where it took off. I mean, I'll never forget, my dad was like, I was like 13 years old. He's like, "Sure you don't want to go chase the girls on the beach with the other guy, with your buddies?" And I'm like, "No, I want to go striper fishing. I want to go fish the backside of fishers."
Dad was taking your temperature.
I was like, "I want to go."
What's wrong with this kid? Why does he only want to fish?
Yeah, like I'll never forget. Like my dad's buddy Wayne was like, his son and the other two guys that I was fishing with, they both had sons the same age as me, and we all played hockey together. And they were like, "Why aren't you out like chasing girls with them?" I was like, I just want to catch fish. I just want to catch stripers. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
So, I mean, girls came.
They can ruin your life later.
So, like, I'll deal with them later. And that's the way I thought of it. And honestly, I loved fishing. It was either playing hockey or fishing. That's the only thing that I did growing up, and kept me out of a lot of trouble. So that was the good thing about it. It wasn't until I'll never forget my buddy Mike. I was fishing with my buddy Mike Poitras a lot, and he was like, "Dude, you got to check out this thing called Striper Cup." And I'm like, "What the heck, Striper Cup?" And he's like, you could definitely win some prizes if you do this. It's like, I'm all about winning prizes. That sounds good. So I'll never forget, it was the first year you guys did the catch and release tournament, the catch and release. And I was like, oh, perfect. I don't even have to kill fish. All I got to do is take a picture of the fish, measurement, boom, send it in. So I was like, and back then, I think it was like your top like 30 fish or whatever. I don't even know what it was.
It was a lot. It might have been top, maybe it was top.
Maybe it was 10. It was top. Well, it was before that. It was like, you had like top, maybe it was top 10, and then it came top 3 each week or something like that.
Yes.
But I think that's what it was, top 10 fish. And I got a little bit of a late start. I didn't start until like May. My buddy told me about it. And my first week, I entered like a 45, a 40, a 42. And I was like, okay, I'm at the top of the leaderboard. This is pretty cool. And that was the first year I won Striper Cup. Was my first year participating in it.
Oh, it's awesome.
I then did it. I'll never forget.
I kind of remember that. I kind of remember like, who's this Joe Diorio dude? Like out of nowhere.
I wasn't even fishing Block Island back then. I fished it maybe once or twice a year. So all the fish that I was entering were all in Old Lyme, Niantic, Waterford, Fisher's Island and stuff like that, all my local areas. So I wasn't even fishing like the big fish. It wasn't until the next year I started fishing block a little bit more because I started getting more comfortable taking out my own boat by myself out there.
But when on those local fish, what was the tactic? Live bunker, top
live
waters?
bunker, 3-weighing.
Okay.
3-weighing. I was, and then reverse surf casting eels. I didn't fish a lot of docks back then. I had them. That was the crazy thing about it was I had the dock, and I'll never forget, Q at River's End goes, here's the dock. It was $6 without hooks. He goes, buy one of each, put a good set of hooks on it. You're going to thank me later. I didn't run across blitzing fish ever, and I wasn't casting topwater unless if I saw blitzing fish back then. So I never used it. The only way I knew how to catch fish was to reverse surf cast an eel or 3-weigh a bunker or 3-weigh. Actually, back then, I wasn't even 3-weighing a lot of bunker. I was 3-weighing mostly scup and porgies.
Oh, yeah, man.
And I'd go out to, the reefs, Black Point, Hatchets, Cornfield, all these different spots, and I would just 3-weigh scup. And there was a couple spots I'll never forget. Blaine would go by me this way, he'd go by me this way, he'd go by me again, and he's running back and forth to the river to get bunker. And I was cheap. I had no money. I would have loved to have done that because I probably would have caught even more fish. But I was so cheap, all I could afford was going to get a packaged squid, get my porgies, and then fish in this one little spot. And I'd fish there the whole day. He'd stop, fish with me for a little bit. I say hi, try to see what the heck he was doing and learn. And that's pretty much what I was doing back then was, trying to, I don't want to say fish near him, but like that guy was a beast.
So you're talking about Blaine Anderson. Yeah. He works with Shimano now, but he was, we did some shows with him back in the day.
He was the man of Connecticut for that stretch that he was guiding and fishing up there.
I'll never forget the first time one of the first times I was out in a boat and my dad was like, hey, you see a guy in a blue and white Skeeter? You go see what he's doing and you go follow and mark that spot. And I was like, sorry, Blaine. So we went to it. I go up and I'll never forget. It was like we had the flip phones and I called my dad and go, Dad, he's using live porgy. And I'm like, he's like, porgy? I'm like, yeah, he ain't even cutting the tops off. He put him down, put him on a treble hook with a sinker. And my buddy Mike went with him one day and I was like, yo, Mike, what's he doing? What's he doing? And next thing you know, that's how we started fishing it. It was scup, big scup, or, keeper size scup, dropping them down on a 3-weigh, 2 cranks off the bottom, keep them, 6 inches to 3 feet off the bottom. And, I'm using my old Lowrance back then. You could see the sinker and you could see the bunker. And all of a sudden you see the fish come up and I go, oh, I'm going to get hit. And then they go back down. And then they come up and you're like, I'm going to get hit. And bam, you feel it. You bow the rod, bam, set the hook. And that's how I fell. I was doing more fluke fishing back then with my dad. My dad wanted to keep fish more than anything. Mm. I wasn't even a big fluke fan of I loved catching them. I didn't like eating them, so it wasn't a big deal to me. But that guy wanted to kill every fluke that he caught. He loves them. Good. He loves them. So when I wasn't fishing with my dad, I was striper fishing, and I was also wanted to beat everybody in Striper Cup as well. So I was awesome. Like, that's how I really started getting into it. And then, so I won my first year Striper Cup and won my second year. And then I really started fishing block a lot more. And I think like I had 2 years where I didn't win. And then I won my first or second year guiding, which was pretty cool. I caught my 70 pounder that year. So
is that the fish on the top water?
No.
What was the most impressive fish I saw you catch? Was you caught it on I think it was the Striper Cup. It was the ocean-born pencil popper.
Yeah. So,
and that was a giant.
This is a great story. So that night I was out fishing with one of my buddies. We probably did 60 bass, no joke, all on soft plastics. And we didn't even use eel. We didn't even use an eel the whole entire night. And they were all cookie cutter size fish, 42 to 50 inches, like all that size.
Wow.
And like nothing, like, and my buddy Justin caught one about 50 inches, and that was the biggest fish, but it was probably only like 42, 43 pounds. It was a smaller 50-inch fish. All of a sudden, I go, hey, when the sun comes up, we've been seeing like crazy blitzes in the morning every single day. I go, we're going to have a chance for some topwater activity. And he goes, sweet. Sun comes up, nothing. And it was like this for 4 days in a row where the sun would come up and bam.
What were they eating?
Sand eels.
Okay.
So I was like, I know the sand eels are still here. So what happened was the tide moved a little bit, and I was like, the tide starts closer in. We got to go closer in. So I go really close to the island, and sure enough, no birds around me, no nothing. And next thing you know, madness starts erupting everywhere. So I throw the ocean-born lure. I cast it out, get hit tight. It drops it. A fish comes up and hits it again. 52 pounder, the one that I caught, 52 inches, and that was the one you're referring to. The very next drift, the fish went down. My other buddy's still casting topwater. He's not catching anything. I dropped down an eel, and the tide I go, we got 3 drifts left, and then the tide's going to go below what the point is to fish out there, and we're not going to be able to catch anything. And he goes, I suggest you put on a 3-way. And he goes, nah, I'm going to catch him one on topwater. Nothing. He didn't catch a thing. That drift, I caught my 70 pounder, the 70 plus.
That was the same day?
Very next drift. Very next drift.
Kidding, man.
Okay. So then I go back, I catch that fish, I revive it. It took us a long time to revive the fish. All of a sudden we go back up, do the next drift. I drop my eel back down. Boom. 50 and a half pounder. 51 inches on the dot. So I caught a 51 incher, a 52 and a half incher, and a 54 incher in 3 drifts.
Man.
In 3 drifts. That was the best striper fishing, like best 3 drifts of my life for big fish.
So how big are the sand eels out there? Or were they on that day?
Some were like this big, some were bigger. You know what I mean? I wasn't really paying attention. I was just, only reason why I threw the ocean-born lure is because I
paying attention to all the right things.
I wanted to go fish. The only reason why I threw the ocean-born lure is because I wanted to fish with Sabile that year. And I was throwing it every day, trying to get some big fish on it. And we caught some good fish on it, but like that was the biggest one. I didn't even get to fish with them. No. I did get them out that year, and I did win Striper Cup, so I guess it all worked out.
That's wild.
Is that the main bait out there? Is sand eels? I still never fished block.
I have no idea. There's a lot of eels. There's a lot of sand eels. You'll see, mackerel jumping on top of the surface. It's just a mecca of bait. Everything's out there. I mean, it's crazy. We'll be sitting there sea bass fishing, and we're using like a Joe Bag's paddle tail right on the bottom with the jig head just going up and down, and you'll catch some nice sea bass, and next thing you know, they're spitting up porgies that are like 2, 3, 4 inches long.
So it's just a buffet out there.
There's everything that you can imagine out there.
Strikers eat a lot of different stuff.
But it's crazy. You go out there. So my first year I started guiding, I wasn't doing the catch and release only back then. My first year I thought the only way you can get clients was to have a catch and kill, type of charter. So we killed some big bass out there, and back then there was, no limit on the big bass. Or we had the limit, but you can only keep one over a certain size. So we get out there, and I'll never forget, I was filleting these fish, and they're just empty. And they're like 49, 50 inchers. And they're just completely empty on the inside. I think what they're doing is just eating those sand eels and just burning them up, ripping through them. Yeah. But most of the fish that I've caught out there are completely empty. They're just, and if they were, yeah, that's where your world record's going to come from. There's no doubt about that.
That's so. You mentioned that you went all catch and release on your charters, and you were ahead of. I mean, now we've had the slot limit since 2020, I think. So we're about 3 or 4 years into it now. You were 4 or 5 years ahead of that.
Yeah.
What'd that do for your business? Did you lose any clients as a result of that? Saying I'm not going to keep any striped bass.
I maybe lost 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But I the first year I started doing it, I told people, we ain't keep killing this bass unless it's really dying. Like there's a couple of people I'd let do it, but the whole entire time I was trying to tell people how important it is. And like, that's when we really started to see the stock start to come down, is when I started guiding. And you started to see that there was some year classes missing and stuff like that. So it was a struggle trying to tell people, hey, you can't kill this bass, but like, let's try to wait for a better eating size or something like that. Mm-hmm. My second year, I said, I'm done. I'm tired of seeing bass dead. I'm tired of filleting fish or stripers specifically. So I started doing the catch and release thing. I caught some flack. There's no doubt. I'll never forget. I put a post up on Real Fishing Northeast. And this is back when everybody participated in the comments.
Is that the Facebook group?
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that.
And everyone's participating in it. And they were like, "Oh, what's wrong with you? You're what's wrong with the fishery?" And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I am, but this is my boat. This is my business. I don't care if I couldn't deal with the fact of knowing that these fish were dying and that we're going to kill, 500 of them. Like, yeah, I'm good with that. That's not my deal. So I made the choice. My business didn't suffer. It actually grew significantly, and it's continued to grow every single year. And still today we're doing it. You know what I mean?
For you, man.
I'm not against people killing striper. To be honest, I actually like stripers better than fluke.
Really?
I actually enjoy eating stripers.
That's a hot take.
I really do. Like when we get one that's in the gills and it's legal size and the client doesn't want to keep it, I'm not gonna lie. But because I actually enjoy eating them. But there's so many better eating fish. You got
that's
sea
kind of how
bass.
I've always seen it.
Yeah, you got sea bass, tuna. I mean, most people fluke, not me.
Yeah.
I'm with you on fluke. Like part of it is I think I've had fluke burnout. Like you get that one good fluke trip. Like we'll go out to Nantucket Shoals, we'll have an incredible trip, and then it's like I'm eating fluke for the next 20 meals.
Yeah,
and I'm like anything else. But when you do put it side by side with like sea bass or winter flounder, especially, fluke is not. I wouldn't put it in my top 10,
sea bass is one of my favorite inshore fish, but
you can't beat sea bass.
I think I didn't like stripers, or I think I don't like stripers because, in Boston Harbor, that was like the primary stuff that you'd actually take home, and it was, I think it was from the old school mentality of like, caught a 30-pound striper, it sat in the back of the Seacraft for, 6 hours in the sun, and then we were going to go home and fillet it and, put it in a cooler then and, bring it home, put it in the fridge, and it just sucked, you know? So
that is a big thing, like people's impression of fish like bluefish. I have that with blues because we went on my first time eating it, went on a party boat, kept our limit, thing sat in a burlap sack all night, came home, and Mom cooked it with Jane's Crazy Salt on the grill all that summer, and it was terrific. Like I have not really gotten back my taste for bluefish.
My grandfather loved bluefish. We used to eat it over sauce. Like you'd put a bunch of oregano, some oil, and then vinegar, and then a whole pile of sauce and tomatoes on top of it, and they bake it. And I was like, when you're a kid, you eat whatever. You eat whatever they put in your front of
you
your
don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice.
My kids are the worst.
Oh, my kids have every single choice. So I'm a total pushover when it comes to my kids.
Oh, dude, I'm just like, please eat fish. I have one fish
3
eater
meals
in my
one
house.
night. It's like, this is ridiculous.
Yes.
It's like, what are we doing?
I made my last meal at 9:00 last night for my son. Mac and cheese. He ate this much. And I ate the rest of it.
And now he doesn't like,
exactly.
Dude,
and people wonder why I'm fat.
And now
The leftover, dude. Dad's the garbage disposal.
Yeah,
dude.
that's crazy.
Right. So, but like I do enjoy catching stripers and eating them. Actually, the way I enjoy them is, I have the piece up here that's really, really thick. I take that and I cut it in half. Cut the fillet in half. And then I take it and I cut little strips, little medallions. So they're like little steaks. And they're about this thick and maybe that wide or something like that. And I'll tell you what, it's so much better. It's so much better.
I think knowing how to take care of a fish,
Yes.
I pretty much could make any fish. I love to cook. I could probably do justice to any fish, and it would be like, damn, that's actually really good.
Yeah.
And they're all a little different. So I'm sure it would be different now, but I don't even.
Great Lake salmon. How do you like that? It is. No,
I don't even like salmon in general. I don't care if it's like wild caught or whatever.
I don't eat much salmon.
It's not my.
Yeah.
It's too fishy.
I love salmon, but that isn't salmon. What's coming out of there? That is some sort of gray mush.
It was great when I was working at the
Shaped into a
college.
fish.
When I was working at the college, there was this one girl that'd be like, "Hey, if you got some salmon, bring it home." And I'm killing every salmon that I catch now because I want the eggs. So I remember one trip I came home and I was there for 3 days. I came home with like 9 salmon, and she was like, "This is gonna last me about a week and a half." I'm like, dude, you're gonna have mercury poisoning. Like, what's wrong with you? No, I'm not even like a really big like freshwater. Like, I'll eat a little crappie, I'll eat a little white perch. If I get a walleye, great, even better. That's the only thing I really like. But most of the saltwater fish is what I like.
Yeah, I don't think there's any comparison between fresh and salt as far as eats go. But we don't have that kind of freshwater, ecosystem where it's like I actually want to eat a fish from this body of water. That's another problem.
We've got the choice. If we were in Ohio or we were in the Midwest,
but I'm sure a lot of those
still
places.
wouldn't eat it.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they're coming from mud puddles out there too, and they're like, "This is fresh seafood." Is it called seafood from freshwater?
I don't.
It's kind of weird.
it's called lake
fresh
food.
food.
Anyways, that's the Connecticut striper fishery is ridiculous. Like, I had never fished down there, and I did a party boat trip on Blackhawk, and I experienced it for like 4 hours with Brian Weiss, and it was right in Old Lyme, and throwing docks, and it was just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And then a bigger one came, and then it was like, I caught my biggest fish there, and of my life. And I fished it for 4 hours. Like, I need to get back down there.
I think if you drew made a Bermuda Triangle of the biggest striped bass, you would start with Eastern Connecticut, maybe go down to Block, over to Cuttyhunk and back. Like, I feel like that is the epicenter of the biggest striped bass.
Maybe
Everything
extend it, include Cuttyhunk to Nomans.
Maybe it's a trapezoid.
Exactly.
It's not a perfect
rhombus.
triangle, but I feel like you're being in Eastern Connecticut, you've got access to Block, you've got access to Eastern Long Island Sound, which is, just tremendous fishing.
Yeah.
Up until this last year, the biggest fish we'd ever filmed on the Water TV was caught by you. Well, had to bring it home.
The better man won. The better fish man won.
Absolutely not. But you pulled a giant fish, 50+ inch fish on the dock out of like 4 feet of water.
That was a great episode.
And you talked earlier about how when you first got the dock, you barely threw it because you only cast a breaking fish. If I remember correctly, I wasn't there that day. Chris scooted down to Connecticut without me to fish with you. But you guys didn't see a breaking fish all day. You were kind of blind casting over this flat where you knew fish were moving up. And man, that fish
the drawing power of that bait is impressive.
Yeah, the dock. So the dock, everyone knows the dock. It's got the perfect rattle. It's got the perfect profile. It slides, side to side. It pisses off fish. It's perfect, especially for dirty water Connecticut, especially with that knock. Like, that knock it's crazy. You can fish a different style plug that doesn't have that rattle or that pitch and rattle, and it won't work. Like some of the, not to get on other companies, but like the Jiggin World one, same profile, same everything. It has a great loud rattle. For some reason, it doesn't work as well. And
nobody's managed to match the dock.
No. The only one, to be honest, and not because he's a sponsor of mine, Joe Baggs, the skipper, has actually, it has not a similar knock, but it has a knock that works. And I've caught 3 fish over 50 pounds on that thing last year in the river. So it is a big fish plug. It's it works differently. Instead of gliding side to side, this thing kind of goes down a little bit, and it has that little bit of a
He's
subsurface.
modified it. He wasn't trying to make another dock. I mean, maybe that's where it started, but he then tweaked it to kind of make it his own. So it's a little unique in that sense.
He was very particular about that, because when we first got some, he was like, hey, throw those away. Like, I'm making some changes. So working with you.
Yes. When he came up with that first model, I was like, dude, this thing is just diving underneath. Like, it's a diving dock, and I go, I can't keep it. It worked. Don't get me wrong.
You caught
it worked.
fish like
caught a lot
that.
of fish. I mean, I remember doing a live session catching like 40 bluefish on that thing.
Yeah.
And Joe was like, you slammed them today on. I go, yo, this thing sucks. I can't work it. Like more than three like twitches, and then it goes underneath, and I have to wait for it to come back up. So we made some changes to it, and it worked so much better. It is one of those plugs that you have to. It fishes differently than dock, 100%. It
does.
Definitely does. You can't rip it like it does, because if you do, it will dive underneath. It does have different actions. An experienced dock fisherman will probably be able to get it, and a person that doesn't know how to fish a dock, probably the easier bait for you to use is actually the dock, because it's a little bit easier to get to learn and figure out. Mm-hmm. But once it's like that second tier, the skipper. It is definitely a big fish plug. There was days that it totally outfished the dock, in which I was. For me to say that, I lived in. I mean, I wouldn't have a business without the dock. Let's be completely honest. I mean, dude, I wouldn't have a business.
It's funny you say that. We wrote a story on the dock in 2015, and it was still like it was a badly kept secret, but to some people it was still like, oh my God, this is a secret bait. Don't tell anybody about it. I remember one guy commenting on it. He goes, "You're going to put me out of business. Like you just put me out of business. I need this to run my charter business." He's like, and now that everyone knows about it. I'm like, dude, everyone already knew about it. I'd go right to Red Top, buy them. Like, this is not.
Was it you? Did you comment? Was that your comment?
No,
I'm just kidding.
Definitely was not me, because I did the TV show on it.
Yeah.
That fish was. I remember it hit. It was the end of the cast, right? He was pretty far out.
The big one with Chris?
The big one, yes.
This is the best story about that. So Chris was fishing the right-hand side of the boat. Or I was fishing the right-hand side of the boat. Chris was fishing the left. And I'm just absolutely wailing him on the right-hand side of the boat. And Chris is...
I know where this is
Chris
going.
was a little struggling a little bit. You know, he was getting some hits, but they weren't going crazy. Yeah. And I'm like, Chris, switch sides with me. Try this side. Because there was a ton of fish. My very, very first cast on the left-hand side of the boat is the fish that hit. And so I take one or two, like pops, maybe three, and I get a roll, and then it hit, and I'm on. I go, I'm on. And he goes, are you kidding me?
I remember that, dude. I saw the raw footage. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, he's like, how does it feel? I'm like, it's a striper, it's all right. And all of a sudden, it gets next to the boat, and I'm like, oh, this thing's huge. This thing's huge. But it was, and he looks at me, he goes, of course, it's the first cast on the other side. And it was perfect. Honestly, I felt bad after. I was like, hey, you want the side back again?
Now that I cleared it out. But yeah. But I remember that fish, it hit. I remember seeing it. I think they got the hit on camera, man. And it was just enormous. And then it comes out of that murky water, and you get that look at it. You're like, oh, man.
The reveal was really good on that fish.
Well, that's the cool thing about the Connecticut River is like that water is so dirty. You can't see like sometimes 6 inches in front of the lure or anything like that. So when you see that fish come up, you're like, oh, is it a 40-incher or is it 50? And it was 50. Oh God. And I remember Chris going in there, and the hooks are all over the place, and he's grabbing it, and I'm like, dude, be careful. It's not that important. Yeah. It's like, oh no, I got it. And I'm like, oh God, please don't hook anybody, because that is the scariest thing about using those docks is you're going to get it eventually.
Yeah. What hooks are you using on the dock now?
BKKs.
Okay.
I'm using the Raptor Zs, and I'm also using the Viper 41s. I like the Viper 41s actually better.
Because they don't have the Viper 41s don't curved in.
They don't curve in.
Yeah.
Right.
I like the Viper 41s a little better. They're a little lighter. The size 3 is I found to be the perfect ones. And the key thing is with all the docks is obviously you got to change the hardware. And you can stick with the hooks for a little bit, catch one fish on it, then throw them away. Because after that first fish, most likely they're going to bend out.
Oh, the ones the stock hooks,
ones. Yeah. The stock ones.
I mean, the dock is a musky bait. That's what it was invented for.
Exactly. So with the with the dock, what I do is I take off the split rings, I take off the hooks, I put size 8 BKKs split rings on there. And those are the only split rings that I've actually found that don't bend. Before I was using like Roscoe's, before I was using the Wolverine ones. Wolverines are great. They're great.
They're the 3-tiered
yeah,
split
the
rings.
They're so
3-tier
thick.
ones.
The hooks get kinked on them sometimes.
Yes, sometimes they get caught up.
Yeah.
But I was even having those rip out sometimes. And
The dock, they can get so much leverage with it that it
it's a
ovals so
fulcrum.
many split
Yeah,
rings.
exactly.
There's
So
a lot of leverage in
that's
that.
the one thing. And then like I tried using the split ring underneath it to try to get that swivel, but then what I found was the hook was hanging down too low, so that wasn't working.
What I tried that too, like the canal style rigging, where you have the barrel swivel between the split rings to attach the hook.
Yep.
I felt like it killed the action.
It
Like
did.
it added the
It did.
drag, and
It
the
did.
dock was not.
It did.
docking.
I put some like cord, and to see if that would kind of take some of that leverage out of play. The thing doesn't swim.
No.
The corded trebles, dude. I wanted to do that too, where you introduce like an assist hook cord, but you use on a tuna jig, but super short. I mean, BKK makes them 4 plugs for tuna plugs.
It just doesn't have the same action.
No. And that's the other thing that you got to be careful about is if you get BKKs are outstanding hooks, but they're heavy. They're like twice the weight of a Mustad or a VMC or something like that.
They're bulky hooks.
So, you get a size, I was running size 4.0 VMCs, extra heavies, you know what I mean? Extra heavy.
Yeah, 6X.
And I'm sitting there and it's like the weight of a 2, a size 2 Raptor Z. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh God. So I had to do some figuring out. The size 2.0 Raptor Zs work well. The size 3.0 Viper 41s, but you definitely need the size 8 BKK split rings. Those are bulletproof. I mean, I haven't found a better split ring, and that's been the biggest trouble with me with the docks is finding a split ring that can actually hold those fish. Because you get some fish, and it might be a 28 incher, and they get the right pressure on that hook or that split ring, and next thing you know,
You start
gone.
pulling it apart.
And then the client's like, "That'd be a 90 pounder! Oh my God!" And you're like, "No, I think it was about this big."
It's about as big as a fish that size gets.
Yeah.
So, but I'm using the BKKs. I found that they're absolutely phenomenal. They don't rust very much. They don't rust. I mean, if you use them the whole season, eventually they're going to rust, just like every hook.
I love fishing top water.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. They've actually increased the catching ratio significantly this past year.
I wish I had known about it when I was younger. Like where I grew up, me and my buddy almost exclusively fished spooks for stripers.
Oh,
Same
really?
thing. We were changing out the hooks and stuff, and every year would catch, and we would super light tack. Every year,
Yeah.
one of us would catch a 42, 43, 44-inch fish on a spook with like 8-pound test and be like, it was the fight of your life. And it happened every season. But that kind of like, whole childhood of fishing a spook kind of prepared me for like getting right with the dock earlier. like as soon as I came across it. But we went down that road of like we need to find a bigger profile than the spook, and they made a big one and it sucked.
The head and magnet.
It was just like a
what's crazy?
sub roll. It was
Those
like
things
fishing
are
a
like
sub roll.
$60-$70 now.
They were
I have
expensive.
I have like
Dude,
10
they
of them
don't-
still.
They don't move the same as a spook.
No, they don't. But they have they actually have a better rattle. They have a better rattle, and I've actually cut them in half, and they make a chamber in the middle.
If you try putting one in a different bait,
I just had to figure out. I cracked it in half, and I was like, well, it's already broke. Let's just see what the inside looks like. And I was like, oh, man, look at that. There's BBs in here. And everything. I was like, it was cool. It was pretty cool.
that is very cool. Family owned and operated for over 65 years, AFCO represents unparalleled quality, performance, and reliability when it counts most. From inventing the first roller guide to introducing the world's first pair of true fishing shorts, which are some of the most comfortable shorts you'll ever own, by the way, AFCO not only delivers products proven to perform on the water, but are true leaders of conservation as well. Their pledge to protect and conserve has 10% of your AFCO purchases going directly to supporting conservation initiatives. Beyond their fishing shorts, a couple of my personal favorites are their Barricade Elite bibs and jacket in their line of Reaper sweatshirts, pullovers, and jackets. Check them out at afco.com. AFCO, any fish, any water.
So striped bass fishing we covered, and it seems like midsummer I used to always see on Joe Diorio on Instagram.
I got one more question. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
Doc, like situations, do you fish them different in the river or in different conditions than out front on the reefs and stuff? Is it like an overcast type thing? Does it really matter?
No. So the day that I went fishing with Chris and we did the TV show, it was blowing like 15, 18 miles an hour, bright blue sunny skies days, like not a cloud in the sky. And we probably did like 70 fish on the low part. So we hammered them.
Yeah.
So no, I fish them in all conditions. The only thing that I'll maybe do, I'm not usually fishing them over 15 feet of water.
Yeah.
If I'm under 15 feet of water, I'm fishing them all the time. If I am fishing them over 15 feet of water, I got to be on suspending fish. They can't be right on the bottom. Because I will fish them in 25, 30, 40 feet of water. It's just the fish have got to be off the bottom a little bit.
You need to be looking up, not nosing around the bottom.
You're looking on your electronics and you're looking down. Okay, where are these fish sitting? If they're sitting right on the bottom, I'm going to break out the bunker, three-way them. Or actually, what I've been doing is those jigging spoons. Actually, and they work great inside the river. The Tony Maha one we've been using. That's been catching some good. Maybe not so much in the springtime. It doesn't work as well in the spring, but fall, man, they get on that bunker bite and that spoon bite, and we're catching them in like 8 feet of water sometimes doing it.
It's a fun way to fish.
It is fun, and it's sometimes you go up and you're like, oh, salmon rivered them, and it's like right in the butt, and you're like, oh man, that's not the right one. That's not the right area, but they've been a fun lure to add to the arsenal lately. But yeah, I mean, you can't beat a topwater bite. I mean, those topwater, especially like we were doing with Chris in the 4 feet or less. I mean, there's only one way for them to go.
You can see them coming too sometimes. It's the best.
When they get right on the back of them, you see them waking it, and then you're like, hey, watch this.
Little puppy dogs.
Yeah. So it makes for some pretty good film too.
So how did you end up ruining striper fishing for yourself? How'd that happen?
It happened about like 4 years ago. I went out for the first time. My buddy Todd goes...
Was that the gully bite year?
So it was before... That was the year after. So the first time I went tuna fishing, I actually went on the Cape with my buddy Todd. And we're casting. We didn't hook a thing. But I'm seeing them. And I'm like, got my blood pumping. I'm like, yeah. I go, next year I'm getting one of these. So I'll never forget. I was going out fishing with a couple of clients, a couple of younger guys. One of the kids I absolutely love, this kid Will. He's a great fisherman. Hopefully he'll work for me one day. But yeah, he's a great fisherman. And I was like, dude, we've got 2 50-pounders. We got unlimited 40-pounders. Like, what else do we want to do? I go, I have 6 butterfly jigs. And we have a chance to go catch some tuna. Do you guys want to go do it? It's like 15 miles this way. And they were like...
Have you not caught a tuna yet?
No.
Okay, this is awesome. Keep going.
I had no clue. I had no tuna rods.
Yeah.
I had a 5,000 BG. I had 2 5,000 BGs and a Daiwa Saltis 30H on a Lamaglass 7350 like striper rod triflex.
So not tuna gear.
No, and like my spinning reel, my spinning rod was a 7030 triflex. Heavy duty striper rod.
Yeah.
Like, and definitely not meant for tuna. But that was that gully bite. And most of the fish were on the smaller side. And I remember everyone telling me how tough and how strong these bluefin are and like, you're going to get your ass kicked on your first one. So we get out to the spot and all of a sudden we actually saw you guys that day.
Was that
the first day?
That was the first day I've ever done tuna fishing.
That makes sense because I remember being like, what the hell is he doing out here?
So I was like, that was the first day I went out. And so we get to the spot. I see a whale. So the fleet's way over there, but I see a whale. And I get up to it. Kid drops down maybe like 3 times on a jig. Boom, he's tight. We're got one. And
That's not how tuna fishing's supposed to go, by the way. But anyways.
No. So I bought a gaff the day before. I bought a gaff the day before. And I was like, I'm going to do this sometime this week because this bite is that good. I know I can get out there. I literally bought a gaff and 6 Shimano butterfly jigs with half white and half green, the green glow and half white. And I That's all we had. And I had like 60-pound tests
out there that year.
Yeah, I had 60-pound tests. I didn't even have like 80 or anything more than that. And so we drop down, we hook up, we land the fish in like 3 minutes. And I'm like, I go to my client, I go, how's it fighting? How's it fighting? I want to know how it fights. Like, he's like, oh, this is sick. This is sick. We get it in, we gaff it. I bring it in. I go, shit, we got no ice. So I look over to my left, and there is the Mach 4 or Mach 6, whatever. It's George Provomos. And he's out with Corey Coquetier or Coquetier and then Kevin Avalon. And they're doing a film. And I'll never forget. I'll be like, hey guys, hey George, you got any ice? And he goes, and Corey goes, get the hell out of here. And I was like, I'm so sorry, so sorry. So I move out of there, and I see this yellow cobia. I'll never forget, it was a yellow cobia. I'm like, hey man, you got any ice over there? He's like, yeah. Wait, you're the striper guy, aren't you? What are you doing out here? He's like, I got a whole tub of ice. You need it? I go, I'll take whatever you give me. He gave me probably gave me like 50 pounds of ice.
Oh, wow.
I was like, this guy's the man. So he was like, what are you doing out here? What'd you get the fish on? I go, we got him on one of these things. He was like, oh, I don't have one. I threw one of my jigs. So now I only got like 2 left just in case. So I go, thank you so much. We go back out. I think it was like 10 minutes later, I hooked up. And it was my first one, and I got it in like a minute and a half. And I was like, I remember getting it in the boat, my client gaffing it for me. I get it in the boat, and I looked at him, and I go, everyone loves these things. Just a big albie. These things are stupid. Like, this is no fun. I have more fun catching albies on little tiny gear than this. And I'm using, quote unquote, light tackle for a bluefin. But it was only like 37 incher.
They were like under.
There were some micros there that year.
There was real micros.
And there were some that you had to measure to see if they were like 27.
Yeah. So like,
28.
I'll never forget. I think we ended up doing like 5 that day, and we caught a couple near you guys. We saw you guys hook up, I think, once.
So
I
you
did
didn't
not realize it was his first day.
I didn't either, man. I remember talking and being like, here's a friendly face out here, you know? So you caught 2 that day, Chris caught 2 that day, and I lost my thumbnail landing Chris's fish because like it shook off at the last minute. The jig hook came out of the fish, hit my thumbnail, ripped it off. And I remember how long it took for that to grow back. And every time I looked at it, I was like, I didn't catch any tuna when I lost this that day. I didn't touch one, but I tangled everybody that hooked up. Every hookup, I met like my jig. I was like, all right, they're here now. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh no, that's Cheech's fish.
You were out of sorts that day.
That was a bad day.
Did you striper fish all night? Was that what it was? Something was off with you.
Sure, we'll make an exception. We'll make some sort of excuse.
Say it was an off day.
That was also the scariest wake up I ever had in my life on the way in. So me and Kevin are in beanbag chairs on the way back. Kevin Blinkoff, who's our editor-in-chief here. Chris and Cheech are riding back. Chris hits a wake, like fast, like didn't see it. Boat went, regulator goes airborne, and like all of a sudden I wake up midair, and I look over, and Kevin, who's also sleeping in a beanbag chair, wakes up midair, and you're like, "There's nothing I can do. I have no control over my body or what's going to happen." And I just remember hitting the deck so hard, looking over. Kevin hits the deck, then like crawls on. He's like still waking up. I just remember seeing him on all fours, being like, "What's that? Where am I? Like, what's happening?" That was the worst wake up I've had in my life.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
I remember that. You guys got launched, and by the time you hit the deck, you were like reaching for stuff, and Chris goes, "Hang on!" Like it was like so delayed. It was like I never saw that. I missed it.
I remember like the limbs going, and there being nothing to grab. I'm like, "Oh, there's
Trust
pain
me,
incoming."
I know that feeling all too well on my little dinky boat, 22.5 footer.
So from that first trip to the goalie, man, I mean, it seems like that, we call it south of the vineyard. You probably call it, what, south of the block? Or still south of the block? Yeah. And that bite has been pretty reliable, man. There were a few years in there in the mid-2010s where it seemed to slow down. Then I want to say like 2019 it started to come back a little bit. And then last year was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was ridiculous. I mean,
you got that dialed in pretty quick.
I learned it on the fly. I mean, I'm still learning every single day. I'll be the first one to say I don't know shit compared to these other captains out there for tuna. But they're a big albie. You know what I mean? They're a big albie. If you can catch albies, you can catch them. You know what I mean? They're just it. I've never been a person to fish in a fleet, but I realized sometimes you got to fish in a fleet with tuna fishermen, and that's just the way it is. And you could be hitting all the right drops, temp breaks and everything like that, and there's just not fish there. But then other days you're a hero. You hit, like, there was one day last year we were fishing in the fleet, and we did pretty well. I think we caught like 4 or 5 fish in the fleet. And I said, all right, let's get out of here. Let's start making our way back. I got a couple spots I want to hit, that have been pretty good. And all of a sudden I'm driving back and just hit like a major temp break, and I go, let's stop here. We stopped. First drop, doubled up, yellows, and then I called Ray Jarvis in, and I go, yo, Ray, we're killing him over here. Get over here. And he comes over. He hooks up, and we're hooked up again. He called another guy in, and it was just mayhem for like an hour, and I was like, all right, I got to get home because I got another charter in the morning. So we got to hightail back out of here. But like, it wasn't always like that, and like, when I started tuna fishing, everyone was like, it's not like striper fishing. It's 100% not, but it is. Whales are structure, dolphins are structure, temp breaks are structure. As long as you're fishing some type of structure or something like that.
When there's bait, there'll be fish.
Yeah. So it's very, very similar. And I learned it. I'm not, like I said, there are so many other guys out there that are so much more knowledgeable than I am. But like, Tuna 101 for dummies, it's pretty easy. You know what I mean? Find dolphins, find whales, drop a jig, cast popper.
It's such a grandiose scene. Like, everything's bigger and it needs to be more, dialed in. Like your rigging and stuff. I think that's the biggest thing, right?
Yeah. Finding
them isn't always that hard. Presenting stuff that they will eat, and being able to get them to the boat without them, finding that weak spot. That's the hardest part. But I think the tendency is, because of everything's, supersized, or can be at least, people tend to overthink it a lot.
Yes. I mean, they're just a fish. They're just an albie. That's it. They're just a big albie, and they're sometimes easier to catch than an albie. I mean, for me especially, you get those albies inside Connecticut, they don't want to eat anything unless it's like exactly what it is.
Buzzards Bay Yacht Sales knows that a great boat dealer is as important as a great boat. Why? Because new or used, you're buying a boat with 100 different systems and components that need tuning, training, troubleshooting, and sometimes repair. While most boat dealers are your best friend only until the sale is closed, Buzzards Bay Yacht Sales has developed a bulletproof reputation for building long-term relationships with their customers. Before, during, and most importantly, after the sale. Go ahead, ask around. We challenge you to find anyone who has anything but great things to say about Tom O'Toole and his team. With 6 locations from Freeport, Maine to Jupiter, Florida, including Marblehead, Massachusetts, and 3 offices on Cape Cod, Buzzards Bay Yacht Sales is committed to providing the best possible product, customer service, and support for both recreational boaters and passionate sport fishermen. It's true, who you buy from is as important as what you buy. Visit buzzardsbayyacht.com today.
Now, is it true you once lost a job because of false albacore?
I've lost, twice.
Twice?
that same job.
So they hired you again.
They hired me back. So I was working at Chili's, and they were like, you have to work Thursday. I'm like, no, I'm not showing up. And they're like, why? I was like, the albies just came in. And I'm like, I'm not coming. And they're like, you need to come or you're not going to have a job. And I was like, I guess I don't have a job. So I never went into work that day. I went back like a week later to get like my last paycheck. And they're like, we've had a lot of customers say, hey, what happened to Joe? Where is he? I worked there for like Chili's for like 5 years during the summertime, just as a summer job. And they're like, where's Joe? Where's Joe? Where is he? And they're like, you want to come back and work? And I worked albie season was over pretty much at that point. Because in Connecticut those years, we had some really, really short seasons. And then come back, circle around the following year, I graduated college and albies came in thick. And it was the day I was supposed to be there, and I just didn't go in for like 4 days in a row. And I sat in there like, I go, albies came? I go, if you want, I can come back in next week. And they're like, nah, we're good. So, yeah, I lost the same job twice.
I mean, the best way to not lose your job to fishing is then to just make fishing your job. So
Yeah. I mean, I was a decent worker, but I don't think I was the greatest worker. I was always either researching fishing or talking fishing or doing something. So
how many years are you into the guiding now?
This is going to be year 7. Year 7, yeah.
And you have a couple captains that you work with too that kind of work under you?
Yeah, they work through us. I got Christian. He's been working with me for a while. I hired a couple new guys. As long as they finish everything, hopefully they'll be doing the same thing these next couple of years. So
that's great, man.
Looking at boats. So anyone wants to sponsor us for boats.
And where can people find you if they want to book a trip? How far out are you booking your trips? Are you already filled for Stripers Tuna?
I'm not filled completely. My August is completely booked out, but Christian's got dates. Christian's just as good of a fisherman as I am. He's phenomenal.
I've seen him in action on the
he is
on the Niagara.
A beast. Like sometimes, and when I say he's like literally a better fisherman than me, there's no exaggeration there. He is really that good. If you're in the fishing industry, you'll know Christian because he's a good fisherman. If you don't, he don't want you to know who he is because he don't want to be known. You know what I mean? So he's like one of those fly low under the table guys, but he's honestly the best fisherman I know. Like, wow. Him and Alberto are the best fishermen I know.
Dude, you have a great Alberto story you told me about how, and it's...
I think everybody has a great Alberto story.
Everybody does, but I really like his because he went through a very similar thing that I had on one of my Alberto ones where you were looking for, was it clown knife fish or peacock bass?
We caught clowns and snakehead.
But what was it? He was like, we have to wait for the lizards to come sun themselves.
Oh gosh, yeah. So we're fishing. We're in Florida. We're in Florida, and we're fishing like largemouth bass for like 2 days, and it was like 40 degrees. It was miserably cold. It was literally the coldest days of the year, and they were like, we're trying to catch largemouth. And all of a sudden, the second day, the temperature spiked a little bit up into the 70s, and he looks at me and he goes, largemouth bass fishing sucks right now. You want to go like take a drive and go to get some clowns? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So on the way there, we hop in the cars, we start making our way. It's a 2-hour drive to go catch clowns. And he looks at me, he goes, all right, the only way we're going to be able to catch these things is if the lizards come out to sunbathe themselves. What? Like, listen, I knew Alberto was a great fisherman.
Yeah.
But we're all fishermen. There are fishing stories, and I just didn't know if this was a fishing story or if this is like real. And he goes into it, this is the hottest point of the day, and that's why they're going to be out there. And I'm like, all right, whatever you say, Alberto. So we get to the spot. We go to the first spot. He goes, and he's like teaching me. The whole everything was a lesson with him. And that was the cool thing about fishing. Everything was a lesson. He was like, how does this spot look? I'm like, it's windy. It's cold. We're in shade. He's like, exactly. We can't fish here. Go to the second spot. As soon as we pull up, we see a fish jump. I'm like, ooh, fish. I'm excited. If that was me, I'm fishing there right away. And he's like, nope. Still, he goes, you can feel the sun, but there's heavy wind through here. We can't fish here. Go to the next spot. We just take one step. Nope, gotta leave. He goes, I got 2 more spots. So we go to the spot, and he goes, if not, we'll go back to the spot where we saw the fish jump. So we go to the next spot. We get outside, no wind, hot. You could feel the rays on your skin, and he goes, all right, perfect conditions. Let's see if anything jumps. Sitting there for 2 minutes, a fish jumps. All right, let's go. Cast out. We're fishing. I think I caught a peacock. Or he caught a peacock, I caught a bullhead. Caught a bullhead. A lot of everything. Yeah, thanks. So all of a sudden he goes, oh, there they are. And here comes like 4 or 5 like these lizards. Like the big ones, the iguanas. They come out and I'm like, okay, Al. He's like, next 10, 15 minutes they're going to bite. Watch. Sure enough, that bobber goes down. I set the hook. I'm tight. The thing jumps backwards. The clown knife fish jumps backwards out of the water.
Those things are alien fish.
I was like, oh, yeah. He's screaming. I'm screaming. This is unbelievable. I lose it. I end up losing it. He's like, oh my God, it jumps. He's like, that was your chance. You got to think, it's like cold weather. Like, this is like, we shouldn't be getting anything. It was like that cold. We set it back up. That one hit the bobber. He goes, they're not going to hit the bobbers anymore. So we're fishing like on a bridge. And he takes the bobber off and he positioned his line perfectly. So this way the rod is sitting on the line like this and holding the line in place. So you got the shiner hanging down right off the thing. And the only thing keeping that shiner in that same spot is that rod. And the line's holding it like this. All of a sudden, 10 minutes later, boom, that thing comes right up. It pops right up. He goes, grab the rod, grab your rod, grab your rod. Set the hook, another clown. So I ended up catching my clown right after that. But I'm telling you, I've had a chance to fish with him a few times. That guy. There is no fish stories with that guy. Everything's true. Everything is true.
That's
I
wild.
believe everything.
I love that level of observation, though, that he's like noticing, okay, here's something else. Here's another clue. Like, these fish bit and this also happened. And that is like back in the day before there were like, people could tell reports across social media or anything where they were like dogwood bushes blooming, the black drummer in Delaware Bay. That's on that level. And I love that type of looking for other natural signals that the fish you want to catch is ready to bite. But you have to be really observant for that.
He's so in tune.
I don't know of any that are like, this is the time of day that they bite when this happens. Like,
you don't know. It
seasonally with like blooms and stuff like that, there's some truth to that. But that is like an infinite level of detail.
But there could be something like that. Like, oh, the blue herons are lining up on the banks of the canal.
Yeah.
Like the stripers and mackerel are about to move in. You just have to. One thing about Alberto is he doesn't miss anything out there. And you're another guy like that. Like, the best fishermen notice everything. They don't get. I get tunnel vision on stuff where I'm like, okay, it's got to be this, and you kind of block out what else is happening around you. But the guys who are really dialed are noticing. Like, I would see like, okay, the clown knives are biting. I'm catching that. And I'll be like, I don't care about these lizards. Like, when I was talking to him, the best thing about fishing with him on going to the clown knife wasn't even the clown knife fishing. It was the ride over. And the amount of knowledge that he talks and like getting in touch with everything and using all your senses to catch these fish, it just blew my mind. And fishing with him has definitely made me a better fisherman in the handful of times that I have. He really makes you like take a second, look around, check your surroundings, see what's going on, take notes of it, and then go back and put it in your thing. Like, I do it steelhead fishing all the time. I do it when I go trout fishing. Like, I'll never forget, like, there's been days where I'm like, oh, there's certain big snowfall, big snow. I know I'm catching a lot of trout. The little stuff bites a little bit tougher. The day after, if I start to see some ducks on the water, usually the bite's gonna be pretty good. I don't know why. Ducks on the water when I'm fishing certain pools, they're eating, they're feeding better, their metabolism's moving more. Same thing with the trout. So that was a big thing. Like, and I didn't realize all this till I started fishing with Al. Like, and start picking up different stuff. So, that is the one thing, is using all your senses, noticing different things. After a river, the reason why the trout bites are good is because all the worms are coming out and, they're going into the river. So guess what? Throw a pink worm on. Maybe the egg sacs won't be fishing that good that day. There's just the little things, little tiny things that he picked up on that I still miss and that other people are missing, that he's like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Everything kind of is interconnected in that, natural world where it makes perfect sense, but it's amazing how narrow-minded you could get with like a singular focus. God. And it's like, I'm just watching this bobber, whatever. God. Or it's like, oh, lizards, I ain't fishing over here. Those things skeeve me out.
There was days like, I can't remember. I have it in my notes, but certain days a blue bead would work better. And only work when it was a specific time of day, light hitting it, and it was blue beads. And that was it. Didn't need any schmear or nothing, just a straight blue bead. normally you go fish a blue bead and you're not going to catch fish on it for a whole weekend. But you're going to have that 10, 15-minute window after a certain light hits, you get a certain temperature, certain dew point and everything like that, the blue bead really turns on. Like I said, little stuff like that you pick up on after a while. And the only person I know that's really been able to do that and take it to the next level is Christian. Christian's, like I said.
How long have you kept a log for? Have you kept a log for a long time? Is it something that you're really meticulous about?
I used to keep a log. I haven't done a log in 6 years.
Is it more of like I'm up upstairs now type of deal?
Yeah. I don't want a log. I had a log where it was mostly just for steelhead. I did some striper stuff back in the day. It was mostly surf casting. Now it's like, I don't have time.
Yeah.
That's what it really has come down to. I would take 45 minutes, write every single note down, write what I saw. If I saw shooting stars, if I didn't see any shooting stars, if I saw what the temperature was like, what the dew pressure was like, what the barometric pressure was like. Didn't even matter, striper fishing, steelhead fishing, I was doing all that. And then I stopped. And it was right after I had my daughter, Jackie. I was like delirious.
Yeah,
and I was like, all right, well, I caught fish the next day, and I didn't take notes. Okay, I went back out. I caught fish again the next day. Would it help? Totally, because there are times where, like, for example, this year, we had June, 3rd to June 14th is some of the best fishing you can experience on the Connecticut River. It really is. Last year, sucked. I was like, what is going on? Why is this not working? This has been like the best weeks since I've started. Full moon. I went back looking at my notes from like 15 years ago. Full moon. Every full moon, I have struggled at that point in the year. When it was full moon later in the season, there was more bunker around. The bunker didn't come in with that moon. They came in with the next moon. So that's why the fishing was good, but it wasn't on. And the topwater bite just disintegrated. Like the week before, topwater was phenomenal. Like in the half moon or even the new moon, it was phenomenal. Second that moon came, boom, done. Out like a light. And I was like, these are my favorite clients. Like some of my favorite clients that would call like the first day. And they're like, Joe, we got like 3 or 4 fish. What? These are supposed to be like 40 fish days. What's going on? And I'm like, I have no clue. And I'm getting pissed. And I remember the second day it happened, I went back and I looked back. I drove 45 minutes back to Newington to go get my book to see what I was doing, see if I had any notes on this. And I went back like 15 years and I found full moon. I struggled the same time.
It's a good argument for keeping some sort of notes because you think you're going to remember everything, but you just can't.
No. The only thing that I have going for me is I'm out every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
So you see the patterns develop.
I see the I live the pattern.
Yeah.
I literally live it versus when you only have, if I was fishing now and I only had the limited time to go out once or twice a week for a couple hours, I'd be taking notes 100%.
You'd have to.
You have to. Because you can't create a pattern by going out twice a week for 3 hours. You can create a pattern by going out twice a week for 3 hours for 4 years.
You can create a pattern. It's just not the pattern you want.
yeah, exactly. But, it's, like I said, I stopped doing it about 6 years ago just because it became overwhelming and I was spending so much time doing that. I had no time to do it with my kids. But, I take mental notes. I don't know. Facebook memories, right?
Dude, the phones these days. It's and then you have, like, I tend to lean on that a lot, where it's like, you
go back into the cloud and you see what you got for those dates.
You see time, like where you were, all that stuff, and then the historical stuff. You just like, oh, what was the pressure doing here? What was this? What was this kind of? What was the the weather conditions for that period? Because it'll be a stretch of good fishing. It's like, what was it? It wasn't just being in the right place at the right. Well, it kind of is, but it's like, why were you like? Why was that good?
The day that we shot the Connecticut River show at Chris, I called Chris. I think like 5 days before. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on here.
Because we were trying to plan it for that first week of June.
It was June 6th. I think we did it, and I called him. I think like May 30th, and I was like, hey, listen, we're catching fish. It's just not at the clip that I want to be. Like, we're going to have like 10 minutes of really good fishing and 10 minutes bad. And then every day I had the same weather, and I saw the weather forecast. It was like 75, bright blue sunny skies. And I was like, oh man, this is like the kiss of death. Like, I'm shooting a TV show. It's going to be great shooting conditions, but it's going to be horrible fishing because you got bright blue sunny skies. We're catching a ton of fish like the prior weeks before. The only days we were catching them were on cloudy days. And I'm like, oh my God. So I remember calling Chris up. And I'm like, Chris, you can come down. I can't guarantee that it's going to be phenomenal, but I'm sure we'll catch a couple
get something,
fish.
yeah.
And he was like, well, when do you think we should come? When do things going to be better? I'm like, well, I think I had like July 18th. And I go, we can plan for that.
That's right,
day.
dude. I remember this. So I remember being like, okay, we're going to push it back to July. And then a day or two later, you called like, can you still do it
I'm
next?
like,
No.
You need to get down here. It's unbelievable. And I remember it was like the second or third. The first we caught like a 35 pounder. The second we caught like 2 40 pounders. And the third, it was just bananas. And I called Chris up. I go, we've had the same pattern, and we're going to have the same pattern in the next 3 days. Get your ass down here. Like, it is on. And I go, he goes, what time should I be there? I think it was like 10:30. Chris rolls in at 12:30. Usual. He did the same thing for the Block Island one. I can get it, though. I can appreciate that because I was a half hour late today, too, because it's a haul. It is a haul. It is a haul.
Yeah, but I mean, you were coming in and sit at a desk with the two of us.
We're not worried about catching a tide or
that's true. But so
those details that matter.
We get out there and it was perfect because like the tide was just like really, really starting. I think we get out there. I told Chris, I'll work the dock, you work a soft plastic because they were hitting soft plastics really good in the day.
And you caught them on the dock, and that was
sure enough. I caught him on the dock, and next thing you know, he goes, you need a dock, and it was just mayhem. But like 5 days before that, I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work, you know. But that's how fishing is. Like one day, I can't tell you how many times I tell my clients, I'm brutally honest. I'm like, fishing sucks right now. Like, do you guys want to cancel or go? No, this is the only day we got, and then go out that day, and next thing you know,
it's great,
best day of fishing you've had. And you're like.
There's a whole lot more at stake being a charter captain like you. I mean, I go out, I have a bad day of fishing, and nobody's disappointed except occasionally Cheech. But you go out, and it's like, oh, man, these people, it is a big day for them. Yeah. They have booked this day months ago.
February.
Nobody disappoints me more than Jimmy Fee. But, dude, I don't know if I could deal with that pressure. Like it's like, that would weigh on me to the point where I don't know if I could keep it fun.
Because they do, you like have to be a little bit of a fortune teller. Like, okay, this day looks good, but people, your clients also have to understand. Like, okay, this is not an exact science. It is.
Yeah, you're running a business. You can't be like, dude, let's just fish, see what happens.
Yeah,
like you know what I mean. It's like that doesn't really. Lend itself to what you're trying to accomplish as a business.
It took a long time to be like, hey, you have to run a trip no matter what.
Yeah.
Like if the fishing sucks, too bad.
You got to figure it out.
You got to figure it out and make something happen. And I think that's what really sets apart some of the guys. Blaine worked in all those conditions. He excelled in all those conditions. He figured out where those fish were.
To make the decent day out of the horrible day is what separates the charter.
I think the only thing that I really have going for me is people probably don't like me when they first meet me, but I think once you get to know me, I'm serious. Once you get to know me, I think a lot of people, I grow on them. I think they start to like you a little bit better, and I have a personality that I'm able to connect with them a little bit more. So I think that's one of the things that I'm really able to do with my charters is I'm able to make people laugh and have a good time. Versus if it's a tough day and you go out with somebody that's dry and not able to have fun with
Remember the old charter captains? They were the most miserable.
Yeah.
Like they weren't fun to fish with unless the fishing was great.
There's some days I'm that old miserable charter captain because it's day 15 in a row and you're like, oh, okay, it's another striper. There's tuna biting. I wish I was tuna fishing, but
I hear that a lot. Where it's like, okay, I'd love to be doing this. So I was fishing with my buddy was up from Philadelphia. He booked 3 days with a charter captain up here, Rob Lowell of Cape Cod Offshore, to do fluke fishing on the Nantucket Shoals. It was mid-June, and Rob's like, yes, dude, that's when I fluke fish.
Yeah.
And that first day, we're fluke fishing, and it was tremendous. And he gets a call on the inReach, and he shows it to me, and it's his buddy being like, 2 for 2, they're here. So the tuna were here, and he's staring down the barrel of 2 more fluke trips, and he's like, can I talk him into fluke fishing? Because I could only do the one day. I was like, you probably could. I go, I'll get in his ear, because
he had his young kid with him.
He had his kid. He had his like 9-year-old kid with him, Tyler. This is Jerry Sullivan, one of my oldest friends. I've been fishing with him since we were 6. And he did. They ended up going tuna fishing. They caught a bunch of them, and I think everybody was happy with the outcome.
Jerry's the best. So. I get high school dirt from Jerry in the DMs all the time. It's always the best stuff.
No,
and it's always right on brand.
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, it's I don't know. It's fun.
Joe, man, where can we find it? Like, if somebody wants to reach out, what's the website? What's the socials? It's
www.joediorio.guideservice.com. Instagram, it's like Joe.Diorio.guideservice. So
we'll put the links to all that stuff. And we've done 4 shows with you, because one was so good it was a 2-parter.
We've
done
the first one.
Farmington with you, Shallow Water, Stripers on Top, and then Block Island Day and Night, which Chris has had the benefit of all the big striper trips, man. But
Chris has gotten pretty lucky. I mean, you guys have been a good luck charm for me, so
that's good.
So
can't complain.
In the off season, you're doing the trout stuff.
Yes.
Do you do any guiding up on the steelhead fisheries?
No, I let my buddies do that up there. If anyone needs any suggestions, I can definitely help them out with the steelhead guides. But no, I do all the guiding here in Connecticut. I do it on the Farmington River from November through May, and then we switch over to saltwater fishing May to November.
Awesome.
So yeah, I mean, we're always fishing.
Are you still fishing that river to block to the reefs, or are you still going to the block a lot?
Yeah. So I've kind of cut down the block schedule a little bit because of tuna fishing. I want to do some more tuna fishing, to be honest. So we're doing a short season in block. At least I am. My other captain, Christian, he could do whatever. I mean, if someone wants to go to block, go ahead, have fun. You know what I mean? Christian might be like, I want to go tuna fishing as well, but I mean, we still run trips to block. We're not doing as many. I'm hoping to make it. Like I said, we're looking for a new boat, so I'm hoping to make that a little bit more, able to do some more trips with a bigger boat. But that's in the future. I mean, we'll see what happens with that. But no, we're doing, May, June, local fishing for stripers, Connecticut River, local stuff. We're in the Old Lyme, Westbrook, Niantic area. And then July, we do tuna. July we do the block. And then later half of July, August into beginning of September, tuna. Tuna first, probably it's how it goes for me. It's tuna first, then block, then local stripers. We're going to get out no matter what, but that's the way it goes. And then September, local stripers, albies. October, same thing. That's the one good thing about October and September. These past few years, albies have really, really stuck around for us. Like before, it was like a short little window. You have 2 weeks of them, and then they leave, and then they come back.
That's why they used to be so maddening.
Yeah, and that's why I would never show up to work.
Yeah, exactly.
They would be here.
That's why they were worth losing a job over.
You had to take full advantage when you were here, and.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, now it's been so much better. They've come in, and I think the other thing that helps is instead of me just fishing Connecticut when I was young, I had to I'm able to go to Rhode Island, I'm able to go to New York, I'm able to go here and spread out the area, and you're able to stay on them a lot longer. But our local albie fishing has been Kevin came down, I think, with Matt Stone at the end of the year,
and they were supposed to tog fish, but they could not.
That's my backyard. That's 4 Mile River. That's where I grew up fishing, is where they went out of. That is where I caught my first albie. It's unbelievable albie fishing when they're there, but they're always really, really picky. I mean, you can go through them 100 times, and they're eating baits that are microscopic. But that's the one cool thing is we were catching 2 years ago. We caught one the second week in November. So we were catching them. I think that year we caught them.
That's late.
I think I caught him. It was the earliest I've ever caught him that year. It was August 24th, and we ended up catching one the second week in November.
We were pretty late. You stuck one on that cobia shoot, which we were talking to you, and you were hey,
you missed them.
That was
you
wild.
Missed them.
Quick one. We're doing a cobia shoot, and the second day was fishing. filming with a local captain out of one of the dealerships down there, and he was a tog guy.
Yeah.
Like that's his thing.
He's a good fisherman.
So
Christian.
I'm in Joe's ear being like, hey, what's up with the river? I really want to get some stripers, this and that. Like, it would just be good to get a mix. And you're like, it's been good. It's been steady, but they're all kind of slot fish. There's no real big ones. So I'm like, that knocked the luster off of it for me a little bit. I'm like, it's tog season. I'm perfectly content with togging. So I'm like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to start your day? I'm like, let's go start with Joe. We'll try to get some early morning top water stripers, and then we'll go togging. We fished next to Joe for about an hour and a half. We're both kind of putting around the river, looking, and you're like, man, it's just eerily quiet. And I'm like, everyone's kind of getting antsy. We're like, all right, let's go togging. So we go togging, and we don't get 300 yards, and I see my phone light up.
It's one of those, I'm like, don't take it, man.
And I look at it, and he's like, dude, as soon as your prop wash dissipated, we got our first fish. And I'm like, same thing as yesterday? And you're like, yeah, like slot size. I'm like, I'm not saying anything. We keep going. We set the anchor, and I pull my phone out, because now it's kind of eating at me, like, is this the start of something? I look at my phone, and it's, hey, have got 3 in the last 5 minutes, right after my text, half a dozen now, and then, dude, they're getting bigger. Get here right now. And I saw that like an hour after it came through, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no, you had them up to 30
I'll
pounds.
never forget that day was slow in the beginning, and then we caught a couple right off the rip, and then it just got. I think the tide gave out, and you guys were fishing in the middle of the channel, like 12 to 15 feet of water, and I was in like 2.5, like to 3 feet.
We didn't want to mug you.
I don't give a shit. I get mugged every day. It's not a big deal. I've learned to deal with the muggings. I would have. Back maybe 15 years ago, there would have been a rattle sinker thrown at somebody.
Well, I mean, we were watching. I was like, if you were catching fish, we would have been right there.
Thought it was a lobster.
But no, that was completely funny how that played out. And then you saved my ass one day south of the vineyard when I was out, and I was in just the most amazing life. Everything was looking perfect, and it just never happened. And it was almost like we were having trouble marking fish, and nobody was catching fish, but all the life was there. The dolphins, the whales, bait for acres. And it was almost like it was too much, that you'd mark a fish and it would be gone as soon as it showed up. They just didn't know where to concentrate. And I'm like, and the fleet's growing, because it's just a beacon of life. And now there's like 100 and something boat, and I get antsy when it's getting really compact like that. I'm like, and it didn't seem like it was happening.
No one was hooking up, and it was crazy because there was so much life out there. There was so much bait.
I'm like, something just needs to tweak, and it's going to turn on. But when it turns on, it's going to be a shit show, and it's going to be happening somewhere nearby. So I go and start start scrolling around a little bit, and I'm like, hit you up on the inReach. I'm like, Joe, what are you seeing? Because you're noticeably absent. And I knew we talked before this trip. Yeah. I knew you were tuna fishing. And I'm like, if he didn't stumble onto this and stick it out to see what's happening, he's got to be into something. I'm like, Joe, what are you seeing out there? And he just writes back, ba-boom. And I'm like, I see the coordinates come through. I'm like, it was where I was headed, because that was a similar spot to where we ran into you fishing your first day. And you were like, dude, they're stuck to the bottom. They're not really showing on screens. There's no life. I've seen one whale since I've been here. Do this
smelled.
drift.
Remember how bad it smelled?
Did smell. And I go, you had hooked 2 fish, I think, by the time I got there. And I'm like, what were they? I was hoping for yellowfin, and you were like, don't know. I'm like, you're like, we lost both of them. He's like, I think they're big. I think they're bluefin. I'm like, all right. So we get there, and within the first half hour, we stick a fish, shakes the hook. Then my buddy sticks another fish, and it's a quality fish. And I made the one of the worst mistakes I've ever made is my saying is, check your drags, always on top of that.
Oh, I thought
Jimmy had all the gear at his house, and and it's the right thing to do. He backs the drags way off. So, I kind of just felt for them. And
I lost his fish.
I made the mistake of not walking over, because we were on the fish for 45 minutes, approaching an hour, and I'm like, it hasn't been too many real big fish. I'm like, something doesn't feel right. I should have went over and felt the rod just to see.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough heat on the fish. We ratcheted it up and we chafed that fish off. We ended up 0 for 5 that day.
Yeah.
I think you were 0 for 7 that
Dude,
day.
That
was one of those weird days.
So like they were just huge, and there was a couple of yellows mixed in.
Yeah.
But there wasn't many.
Bags had a yellow. He got a yellow
Yeah,
that
he
day.
got a
He
yellow.
caught. It was the only fish landed out of the group of us.
Yeah.
And we hooked
the
over
day
like
before.
16
I think the day before I caught like 11 yellows.
Yeah.
And we caught one big bluefin on top, but that week, there was like a 2 or 3, actually, there was a month we were fishing that spot, and it was me and Joe Bags. I got to give Joe the credit. He actually found that spot.
Yeah.
It was
super quiet.
there was no one there.
It was the 3 of us.
Yeah, there was no one there.
Yeah.
And it was like that for about 3 weeks, and then the Klondike showed up. And he went to big party boat in New London, and next thing you know, there's 1,000 boats there, but the bite only lasted like 2 or 3 days, and then the smell left, and the whales left, and then we all kind of went out further. I remember the fish were kind of like out by the dump, and I remember I was coming back in, and I saw one whale in that same spot. And sure enough, I dropped down. We started catching yellows, and that spot lit up again for like another 2-3 weeks.
It's a small piece. I like that spot.
It was really, really, really good. There was a lot of bait there. There was bait there the whole entire season. I got to give Joe the credit. He was the one.
Maybe I have to rename the point on my.
It was so we called it the
Navionics app.
Joe spot, but I mean Bags. I got to give him to him. He did put me on that.
It's
spot
in there as baboom drifts.
Bags drift. Bet on Bags, right?
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate that.
Those sleek jigs were actually killing there. That was they were on that sleek jig bite, and then they were on that Ron Z bite real early. I think you had a couple bites on the Ron Z.
Yeah, we had one bite on the Rons, and then the rest of them were on
Shimmer Falls.
Yeah, and Nomads. The white
streakers.
The streakers. The white ones.
Yeah, we did well on those streakers too. Those were the Shimmer Falls were great. I didn't get them until the end of the season.
I like them,
but man, they were crushing. I mean, absolutely crushing.
I like how they work through the water column. Yeah. It's easy fishing.
I mean, I'll tell you what, that tuna fishing is so much fun.
Do you like jig bite better or a popper bite?
Pop.
I want the jig bite, man.
I like the jig bite. I like the jig bite. They're nothing better than something hitting on top.
I haven't done too many, giant or like bluefin topwater stuff. I like the visual aspect of it, but I'd rather jig bluefin. I'd rather pop yellowfin.
Yeah, I mean we didn't pop a lot of bluefin. The yellowfin we popped a crap ton.
Yeah.
We actually had a yellowfin hit like you guys had last year.
Where it came all the way out of the water like that?
Right out of the water. What's his name? I think he works for Coastal Charters. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's not the main guy, the other guy. Anyways.
Oh, Jogo?
No.
Jogo used to work
Maybe it
for
was
Coastal.
somebody else. It's somebody else. He used to work with Joe Bags. He used to do all the video for him. Anyways.
Oh, no, it's Ridgeway.
Alex Ridgeway.
Yes,
Yeah.
Ridgeway. He was fishing right next to me, and he actually was taking a video of my boat.
Yeah.
And the fish
caught
hit
it on
and
camera.
caught the fish coming out of the water
Yeah.
on cam. And we were like, oh! They're nothing better
There's
than
nothing
top
better.
water. Nah, they're nothing better than top water. I mean, don't get me wrong. You're sitting here, you're jigging, and then all of a sudden, bam!
I love that.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. But there's nothing better than sitting there, pop, and you're boom, and it explodes the plug, and you're like, oh my God. It was like I had the chance, not this year, the year before, to take my dad and my brother out. My dad has never gone tuna fishing. My brother's never gone tuna fishing. And
I love
we get
taking
out
people
there.
out for their first.
Yeah,
dude.
it was, and like I'm still getting into it. And we get out there, and we're like in the gully, and we see a pot of dolphins go by us. And actually, we're like before the gully, way before the gully, and I go, Nick, my brother, Nick, cast right on the backside of those dolphins. Second pop, his first cast, boom, 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 hits top water. My dad doesn't even have a rod in his hand, and we're tight, and he's like, I'm on, and things just, and we got it on one of those striper rods, like it was a Lamiglass Blue Water Tarpon series, like 8-foot thing. The thing just is a wet noodle. And he was struggling to get this thing in. I think we ended up doing like 14 that day, and my dad got like 5 or 6 of them as well. So like, and it was all yellows, and it was just all poppers. We didn't have to break out any jigging gear. And my dad was like, long ride. We got back to Montauk. He was like, "Oh man, that was a quick ride. We're back to Fishers." And I go, "No, that's Montauk." Like, we got another hour. He's like, "Oh my God, I'm never doing this." He was like the whole ride. He's like, "Man, great fishing, shitty ride. Great fishing, shitty
dude,
ride."
The older I get, the more I realize it's a young man's game, dude.
I'll tell you what. So I was totally against beanbags on my boat. I bought 2 beanbags to make it more comfortable for the guys. So
it helps, man. It's a long day.
Oh man, I get my ass kicked that time of the year, especially doing them back to back to back to back. Like I got a lot of respect for the guys like McMurray, all those Cape guys. They're Terry Nugent. When he was doing them back to back to back to back to back.
It's a grind.
Yeah, that is.
There are guys like
striper fishing grind, tuna grind, completely different. Yeah, completely different.
Dude, I mean, you look at a stretch of perfect weather and you think, man, a day off would be pretty nice. Like, I know I'm not getting paid if I don't go, but it's been 10 in a row, and like the body.
I've had charter captains claim boat issues on those days where they've been going for like 20-something days, and it's like, it was the weather, and it was like, full of shit.
That's the one nice thing about having that small boat is I can say, hey, it's 5-footers or 4-footers out there. We ain't going. We're gonna go fish local for.
Yeah, I know it's only 3-footers, but the period length is real short. So
and trust me,
it's not gonna be fun. Yeah.
I try to go through it all, but I mean, there's only so much you can.
Yeah, you got to be smart about it.
We got to land this.
That was awesome, Joe. Appreciate you joining us.
No, it was awesome. I had a blast.
We got to fish together instead of
come down
next to each other.
Come down.
We're gonna make that happen. I want to do some striper fishing with you. I definitely want to do some center pinning with you.
Yeah,
absolutely,
center pinning. Like I said, I'm not doing anything till beginning of May. I got the 2 trips planned, but that's it.
All right,
let's make something happen, buddy. Well, hey, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Joe, man. Always a pleasure, dude.
Definitely.